Hey, check it out! You could technically live in the Eiffel Tower if you don't mind residing in a small apartment. Gustav Eiffel designed the tower to feature a private apartment for himself right at the top of the construction. He left the place all neat and tidy with all the necessary furniture. These days, the apartment is home to two mannequins, that of Eiffel himself and his equally famous friend Thomas Edison. A sneak peek at the apartment is available for tourists who purchase a ticket to the top of the tower. If you ever pass through Trafalgar Square, you'll surely miss London's smallest police station, since it's hidden beneath a lamppost. The reason why it was placed there back in 1926 was to let police officers be close to public rallies. They happen quite a lot in that area. Some even said it used to have a direct phone line to Scotland Yard. It's now used as a cleaning station, so there isn't much to see there apart from some mops. Grand Central Station, one of New York's busiest, has a great hidden activity for travelers. There are tennis courts available in a secret space named the Annex. This area used to host a lot of different things back in the day, from a recording studio to an art gallery. These days, though, the location is known as the Vanderbilt Tennis Club and can be visited by the public. Similar to Mr. Eiffel, producer Samuel Lionel Roxy Roxafel designed a hidden apartment for himself in the Radio City Music Hall in New York City. He also asked for the apartment, now called the Roxy Suite, to be decorated in the Art Deco style. It features 20-foot-high ceilings covered in gold leaf and walls with floor-to-ceiling plush drapes. These days, only Radio City performers and VIP guests can visit the location. You might be able to rent it out too, but they say the prices are very high. Rome's best-known symbol, the Colosseum, has secret tunnels hidden beneath its grounds. Back in the day, ancient Romans used these passageways to keep wild animals, like lions, tigers, elephants, and bears, as they were used for gladiator fights and other types of entertainment. They've been open for visitors since 2010, along with the Colosseum's plumbing system. It was quite the technological advancement for the time, featuring drinking fountains and even toilets. There are some people that have criticized the opening of these secret tunnels. They believe it might affect the building's structure, given the huge traffic of visitors. The Empire State Building is said to have 102 floors, but that's not true. It actually has a secret 103rd floor. The way to access it is through a hidden staircase located on the 102nd floor, but it's mostly available for the building's engineers and celebrities from time to time. That's not all. The 103rd floor leads to the Empire State Building's capsule. It's the building's famous dome. One of the most famous American landmarks features a mysterious hidden chamber. If current records are true, there's a secret room behind Abraham Lincoln's head from Mount Rushmore. It was meant to keep relative artifacts and documents of American history, like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. We now know these important documents are kept in another location, and the Mount Rushmore room remains inaccessible to the public to this day. Like maybe it's a video game room for park rangers. Or not. Completed between 2550 and 2490 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza is the last remaining of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Constructed as a resting place for the 4th dynasty Egyptian pharaoh Khufu, it was thought to feature the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, and the Queen's Chamber. But that's not all, as recently a secret room was discovered here. Dubbed the Big Void, kind of like my head, this huge space is nearly 100 feet long. Its main purpose is still up for debate, but some archaeologists believe it was used as an internal ramp to help build the massive structure. Cinderella Castle is the main attraction of Disney World in Orlando, Florida, in an area called the Magic Kingdom. It does have a hidden room of its own, dubbed the Cinderella Suite. The suite was originally intended to host Walt Disney himself and his family. He passed away in 1966, and he never got to see the final result. It was finally finished in 2006, and ever since, it's only been open a limited number of times and only for visitors invited by the Disney company. Grand Central isn't the only station with hidden features. Italy has its own Milano Centrale, the country's second largest railway station. More than 320,000 passengers pass by these walls every day. But most of them never notice the closed doors on the sidewall of the station leading to the Royal Pavilion, a fashionable area designed as a waiting room for the royal family. The pavilion features 2 grand halls divided into 2 floors with luxurious furniture, styled marble, all decorated with royal sculptures. Now, even the Statue of Liberty has a hidden room. Try to guess where it is? It's in the torch of the statue. Now, unfortunately, it's not available to the public ever since it was completely closed back in 1916. A camera was placed here back in 2011 to allow people to enjoy live streaming of the panoramic view. A statue of Leonardo da Vinci, located at Rome's Da Vinci Airport, was first unveiled back in 1960. It recently went under renovation. One of the workers made a mysterious discovery during this process: a small hole somewhere in the middle of the statue at about 30 feet. When it was carefully opened, 2 parchments were found inside. Written in classical Latin, the first document told the story of the area that now houses the airport. The other one provided a list of people who attended the inauguration of the statue. The U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. has a secret sports facility where clerks, off-duty police officers, and other Supreme Court employees can play basketball. The court, located on the top floor of the building, is obviously dubbed the highest court in the land. Excuse me while I dribble. Disneyland's Club 33 is located in the New Orleans Square section of the theme park in Anaheim, California. This exclusive club houses only 500 members, and it was inaugurated in 1967. It aimed to entertain celebrities, politicians, and sponsors. The decorations were courtesy of Walt Disney himself and his wife. Services here come at a hefty price. Members have to pay $25,000 to join the club, and later a yearly fee of between $12,000 to $25,000. The entrance to the club was easy to miss, since it was hidden behind a doorway with a single gold plate that had the number 33 engraved on it. A makeover of the club took place in 2014. They moved the entrance to an even more secret location, but people can still see the old one in its original place. The New York City public libraries have hidden apartments too. Employees and their families could stay in those hidden rooms that are placed above many of the public libraries. Most of them are either closets or empty rooms these days, but some of them are available to the public, like those belonging to the $4.4 million renovation project of the apartment in the Washington Heights branch. It was transformed from an old, dusty, 3,750 square foot space into a dedicated teen area and tech center that also features rooms for adult education programs. Cool!
What's hiding inside Coca-Cola cans and regular household batteries? Why do magnets affect breakfast cereals? Do crosswalk buttons actually work, or are they just useless decorations? What does that USB symbol really mean? I'm not sure I know the answers to these and similar questions, but I'm eager to learn the truth together with you. Let's find it out. Coca-Cola cans have a secret few people know about. Here's a Coke can. Let's submerge it in a highly corrosive alkaline solution. The aluminum dissolves due to a process known as hydrolysis, and we can see a plastic liner inside the can. It's made from a polymer or epoxy resin and serves as some kind of a protective barrier between the aluminum walls of the can and the rather acidic soda. Despite a popular myth, household batteries don't actually contain liquid, and if you accidentally cut them open, no toxic liquid will spill. Most of them are dry cell batteries, which are made of electrochemical cells. Those convert chemical energy into electrical energy. Larger batteries often house numerous small cells within them too. Even Tesla vehicle batteries consist of multiple small cells. When combined, they easily provide the necessary voltage. Most toothbrushes have differently colored bristles, but they aren't just pleasing to the eye. Those bristles, often blue, have a functional purpose. They're called toothbrush indicators, and their colors fade as you use the brush. The American Dental Association recommends changing your toothbrush at least 4 times a year. And by getting paler, These bristles help you figure out when it's time to replace your toothbrush. You'll probably agree that there's no better snack than a pack of chips. Some are flat, others have ridges. Is it just aesthetics? Not really. The main purpose of those lines on some kinds of chips is to help with the distribution of spices and seasonings. In other words, all those substances that make your chips taste like cheese are mostly stored inside the lines. Plus, the lines make chips crunchier. Now this one might be a surprise, but some breakfast cereals are magnetic. That's because they're often fortified with iron in the form of a fine powder. Due to the added iron, cereal flakes get attracted to magnets. All this may sound kinda alarming, but in reality, the iron content in the flakes is minimal and doesn't pose any threat to your health. That clear fluid in gel pens is called the ink follower or stopper fluid. The gel in such pens contains pigment particles dissolved in a polymer solution. The main task of the stopper fluid is to be a barrier to prevent the gel from evaporating or leaking out. Without this transparent fluid, your gel pen wouldn't function. The fluid always stays in one position and doesn't get dissolved with the gel. Neither does it move backwards or flow out of the pen. Many pedestrian crosswalk buttons, namely in New York, are placebo buttons. They do literally nothing when you press them. Originally, they were functional after being introduced in 1964, but today, most of them don't affect traffic lights, which are programmed based on the real needs of the traffic flow. Why do such buttons even exist then? It's a simple psychological trick, providing you with an illusion of control. You might have noticed that movie theater seats are almost always red. This choice isn't random, it has strategic importance, which is rooted in visual science. The thing is, red light has a longer wavelength. It means that it's the first color to disappear in low light. It allows the audience to concentrate better on the screen once the movie begins. Such a design choice enhances the viewing experience by minimizing distractions. Speed bumps are crucial for pedestrian safety, but at the same time, they can seriously increase car emissions due to the non-stop acceleration and deceleration they cause. To address this issue, some cities, like London, are testing fake speed bumps. Those are optical illusions painted on the road. They look raised from a driver's perspective, but in reality, they're flat. Authorities hope that this approach will slow down drivers without having a negative impact on the environment. Soda bottles are always filled in such a way that there's some space between the liquid and the cap. That's because soda contains carbon dioxide. It's a gas that can expand once the bottle's heated. If there's no gap in the bottle, it can break because of the pressure building inside. Also, when you open your drink, the gases go out in the form of bubbles, making the drink overflow. The gap helps with this problem too. The USB symbol, looking like a trident, has always sparked multiple speculations about its origin. One popular idea is that it represents Neptune's trident and symbolizes power and adaptability. But there's also a little bit less exciting theory. A man who claimed to have designed the symbol in the 1980s stated that it was supposed to represent connectivity. The large circle symbolizes a computer, while the attached shapes, the circle, the triangle, and square, stand for different outputs. The design of a tennis racket has a specific feature known as the throat. It's an open space below the head of the racket. This space isn't just for storing balls, it also improves the racket's aerodynamics by letting air pass through. It seriously reduces drag during swings. Speaking of tennis courts are usually built with a north-south orientation. It helps minimize the impact of the sun's position during the game, ensuring that neither player has the sun directly in their eyes. Look closely at a tram's overhead lines, and you'll see that its contact wires zigzag back and forth instead of going in a straight line. That's because all trams have pantographs attached to their roofs. The upper part of the pantograph is gradually worn down by the overhead wire and eventually needs to be replaced. To wear it down evenly, the wire is not installed strictly along the tram's path, but in zigzag patterns. As the tram moves, the pantograph slides along the wire, and it wears down evenly. Those cone-shaped water cooler cups? their shape is intentionally designed to prevent users from setting the cups down. This allows employees to minimize the risk of spilling water on their desks around various electronic devices. Plus, less material is used to produce cone-shaped cups, which makes the process less wasteful and more cost-effective. It also kinda supports sustainability by encouraging people to drink their water quickly and dispose of their cups immediately after. Most suitcases have 2 zipper pulls, and it serves several purposes. First of all, if one zipper fails, the other can keep the suitcase closed. Even better, having 2 zippers allows you to have easier access to small sections of your suitcase without having to open it entirely. And finally, when you have 2 zippers, you can connect them with a padlock for increased security. Some plastic milk containers have dents on their sides. These dents serve several purposes. When milk spoils, it usually causes swelling and high-pressure buildup inside the container. That's when the dent pops out and doesn't let the jug blow up. Plus, if you decide to freeze the milk, it will expand like any other fluid. And then again, the indentation will pop out and prevent the container from breaking inside your freezer. If you ever had a problem figuring out why fake pockets exist, you need to hear this. The main reason is that if a clothing item has a specific cut or shape, pockets may spoil it. They can alter the item's shape either in the warehouse or already on the retail rack. The solution? Getting rid of the pockets in key areas. Plus, fake pockets are obviously cheaper, and they don't get stretched out. The thermos wasn't actually invented to keep your coffee warm. It was made by a Scottish scientist who wanted a safe place to keep his chemicals at a stable temperature. So, he took 2 bottles, put the smaller one inside the bigger bottle, and vacuumed out the air between them.
Let's play a little guessing game. I'm going to name the sites you have on your bucket list. Machu Picchu, the Colosseum, Petra, Taj Mahal. Did I get at least one of them right? I have to confess, I was just taking them off the list of the new 7 wonders of the world. It was officially finished in 2007 after a worldwide vote. What happened to the old list? Well, it was put together in the 2nd century BCE. And there is just one site currently still standing, the Pyramids of Giza. Pack your bags. We're going to Peru, the home of the mighty Machu Picchu. When it was first discovered in 1911, its explorer thought he had managed to find the lost city of the Inca. Several decades later, it turned out it wasn't the same city. Plus, there were still 3 farmer families living there, so it couldn't be really called lost and forgotten. No wonder they like it so much there. The stones making up the buildings are cut so precisely and sit together so tightly that you can't even insert a credit card between them. It has saved the city from some serious earthquakes, which are common here. The buildings just dance through all the shaking and then go back into place. And because of the way it's arranged, you can see the sun rise or set exactly behind the important peaks on important days for the Inca. More than half, 60% of all the construction in Machu Picchu was done underground, so you can't even see it. The best part is that there are still things to be discovered if you want to get your name inked in history. Our next stop is on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The mighty Chichen Itza sits here for well over 1,500 years. The structure has exactly 365 steps. You can count when you go next time if you don't trust me. The Maya, who built the whole thing, were really into astronomy. So it's not surprising they made as many steps as there are days in a year. Also, if you happen to be here during the spring or fall equinox, you'll notice the shadows the setting sun casts make it look like there's a snake going down the stairs. The feathered serpent was one of the main deities in ancient Mexico. Chichen Itza used to be a busy urban center. It had its ups and downs. And by the time the Spanish arrived, the 16th century, it had been mostly abandoned. The first photos we have from the spot are from the end of the 19th century. Looks like the terraced pyramid had a lot more vegetation on it back in 1892. The only source of fresh water in this dry climate is the cenotes, or water-filled sinkholes. There are 4 visible cenotes, and the temple pyramid most likely stands on top of one more. Archaeologists are looking for tunnels to enter it. To see our next wonder, you must be prepared to share it with around 15,000 others. That's how many people visit the statue of Christ the Redeemer every day. The statue sits above the Corcovado mountain and weighs roughly 635 tons. Must have been tricky to lift it all the way up there. Actually, it came in parts. A French sculptor, Paul Landowski, made several pieces of the future sculpture out of clay. The head and the hands were made in full size, and the body would be made larger on the spot. The parts of the statue were cut into cubes and then cast into concrete and put together. Workers prepared the cement right on the spot and transferred all the tools by a small cogwheel railroad which tourists used to get up the hill. The statue is the best proof that lightning does strike in the same place more than once. It must be because of its position on top of the mountain, its fingers, head, and eyebrows got damaged by storms. Time to move on. This time, we're going to Agra, India. Yep, to see the Taj Mahal, that beautiful pink construction. Wait, wasn't it always white? Well, the Taj Mahal changes its color depending on what time it is. It looks pale pink or pearly gray at sunrise, crystal white at noon, and the sunset paints it orange bronze. In the evening, it may even seem translucent blue. And that's not the only optical illusion here. When you move towards the main gate, the building seems gigantic. But the closer you get to it, the smaller it looks. The minarets, or towers on both sides, might seem to be standing perfectly straight, but in reality, they're leaning outward. It's done for aesthetic balance, and also to prevent the towers from falling on the main building in case of an earthquake. For construction finished in the 17th century, the Taj Mahal looks good as new. That's because it regularly gets a spa day. They apply a proper facial mud pack to it, which is a traditional recipe to keep the radiance. I'm feeling peckish from all the traveling. How about we go to Italy and have some pasta? Just kidding. The real reason would be to see the Colosseum, of course. Its original name was the Flavian Amphitheater because it was built by the Flavian dynasty. The new name is most likely after the colossal bronze statue of Emperor Nero that was once next to the building. The model for the statue was the Colossus of Rhodes. In its nearly 2,000 years, the Colosseum has lived through at least 3 major fires and 4 earthquakes. It was damaged, repaired, and rebuilt many times. The impressive construction once hosted up to 80,000 spectators. What they watched wasn't necessarily as cruel as Hollywood made us believe. Most gladiator matches went under strict rules. Sometimes the public would get bored with the show, and the participants would draw out of the arena. Once the Colosseum stopped serving as an arena for those scary shows, it was used as a cemetery, a place of worship, for housing, workshops for artisans and merchants, the home of a religious order, and a fortified castle. Now it's open to the public, and you can check out its underground labyrinth. Are you ready for the next wonder? It's the lost city of Petra, or rather, the rediscovered city, which was once super rich and vibrant, then got abandoned and found again in 1812. The whole city is made of sandstone, and even though it's in the desert, it has seen some pretty heavy rains. Still, it has lasted 2,000 years thanks to some very skilled workers. Modern laser scanning showed that they put giant steps into the mountain to check the quality of the rock and carve out the buildings without risking their lives. And how did people survive here in the desert without any water? The Nabateans who lived here developed a whole complicated system of conduits, dams, and cisterns to make sure they have enough vital fluid for the whole year. In case you're in your Indiana Jones mode, there's still a lot to discover here in Petra. Archaeologists believe we only know 15% of the city by now, and the rest is still hidden underground. Let's finish our tour with the largest human-made project in the world. Yep, I'm talking about the Great Wall of China. It stretches for over 13,000 miles from the Bohai Sea in the east all the way to the Gobi Desert in the west. But don't trust the popular myth. You won't really see the wall from the moon. It took over 2,000 years to finish, and a good amount of building materials, mostly bricks and cut stone blocks. Have you ever scratched your name on a tree or even worse, some famous place? No worries, I won't tell anyone. People who built the wall did the same. Some of the bricks, which are mostly from the Ming Dynasty, have some data like production location, brick household name, and the responsible officials. This was a form of quality control. If something happened to any of the bricks, it would be easy to find out who to blame for it. There are countless doors all over the world that haven't been opened for decades, and even centuries. The question is why? It seems that nowadays you can open any door you want. The truth is that some doors were sealed for a grave reason. And so far, nobody has found out what treasures and mysteries they hide. Here are 4 doors that keep their secrets all too well. The Taj Mahal. First up, we've got the Taj Mahal in India, one of the most romantic places in the world. Shah Jahan commissioned it in 1631 and dedicated it to his 3rd wife, who he loved like crazy. They were married for 19 years and had a whopping 14 kids together. But unfortunately, she passed away while giving birth to their last baby. Shah Jahan was heartbroken and decided to build an epic tomb to remember her by. The construction took a whopping 20 years to finish. The building has quite an interesting layout. The design is super unusual with these 4 massive 130-foot tall minarets that stand on the corners of a huge platform. They're not just there for looks. Back in the 17th century, architects were having some serious issues with buildings collapsing under their own weight. So, the chief architect of the Taj Mahal made sure to place those minarets as far away from the tomb as possible. And he even tilted them in a way so that if they did fall, they wouldn't wreck the rest of the Taj Mahal. Talk about planning ahead. The Taj Mahal is hiding some crazy secrets. There are sealed rooms all over the place that nobody is allowed to enter. And if you check out photos of the building from the riverside, you can spot 2 basements. But guess what? They're sealed up too. Nobody knows what's inside or why they've been locked up since the time of Shah Jahan. Apparently, there's a good reason why those rooms are off limits. Some researchers think that they were built using marble, which turns into a different substance called calcium carbonate if it's exposed to carbon dioxide. And when that happens, little bits of marble start chipping off like crazy. To make matters worse, there's no air flowing into these rooms. That means that if too much CO2 builds up in the basement, the 4 minarets could collapse. But wait, there's more. Some people think that the body of Shah Jahan's wife can be found in one of these sealed-up rooms in pristine condition. Why not? Who knows what the mysterious rooms might keep? The Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx of Giza is shrouded in mystery. It's not just the largest monolith statue in the world, but it's also a hybrid creature with a woman's head and a lion's body that originates from Egyptian and Greek mythology. It's also very ancient. It's estimated to be around 4,500 years old. The construction of this marvel took about 3 years and required 100 workers who were not slaves and were treated with delicacies like sheep and goat meat. It is also thought that it used to be much more massive than it is now. Archaeologists found huge stone blocks and abandoned toolkits near the site. However, the real secrets of the Sphinx lie underground, near its paws. A group of scientists used a seismograph to detect 2 hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx's paws. Some people think that these rooms might be the legendary Hall of Records, which holds ancient scrolls revealing the secrets of the universe. I mean, that's way cooler than any library I've ever been to. Rumor has it that the Egyptians even had info on Atlantis stashed down there, which is like a super old version of a conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, we can't go on an adventure to check it out just yet. The chambers presumably have 2 entrances, but both remain sealed. The researchers haven't yet received the green light to check out their theory. Let's hope they won't keep us in suspense forever. Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple. This temple is located in the beautiful state of Kerala in India. This temple is famous for more than just its breathtaking beauty. Underneath the temple there are 6 vaults, creatively named A, B, C, D, E, and F. The enormous iron doors to these chambers add to the mystery of what's behind them. A few years back, the authorities decided to open these vaults to the world, but it wasn't an easy task. You can't just open the doors and enter the vaults. It required a lot of work. It took them a while, but finally, in 2011, they opened 5 of the 6 chambers. And guess what they found? Tons of treasure. Bags of gold, precious gemstones, and priceless diamond jewelry. The estimated worth of everything found in the vaults is a whopping $1 trillion. It's like the temple was the real-life inspiration for Aladdin's Cave of Wonders. But wait, I said 5 of the 6. What happened to the last one? Vault B has remained closed, but not for lack of trying. They simply didn't manage to open it. There is even a belief that it's fatally cursed. Legend says that only a saint or sage can break the curse by chanting a specific mantra. But no one has been able to do this yet, presumably because we don't have saints or sages at our disposal. There is also rumor that in the 30s some temple invaders tried to enter Vault B to do some good old looting. But they never reached their target. Apparently terrible snakes materialized out of nowhere and chased the gang away. But of course, this is just an urban legend, and there is not proof of that. However, it is said that the Auditor General dealing with the temple claimed that Vault B had been opened at least 7 times since 1990, and nothing bad happened to anyone who entered. Who knows? Maybe we should send Indiana Jones to check it out. The First Emperor's Tomb. Deep under a hill, completely undisturbed and surrounded by dangerous traps, lies an ancient 2,000-year-old tomb. It belongs to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He was born in the Qin state and became king when he was just a boy. But when he grew up and gained full power, he united the warring states ancient China was divided into by conquering them. After that, he created the Qin dynasty. When he died in 210 BCE, they buried him deep underground in a massive tomb. And when I say massive, I mean massive! Back in 1974, some farmers in Xi'an, China, stumbled upon something strange while digging a well, a huge terracotta soldier. This discovery led to an extensive archaeological dig that has continued for over 40 years, revealing a collection of thousands of clay soldiers. The unique thing about these soldiers is that each one has its own unique features, from hairstyles to facial expressions. It's believed that there could be up to 8,000 of these soldiers, but only 2,000 have been found so far. Interestingly, the central tomb, which is believed to be the resting place of the emperor, is still untouched. In ancient records, there are references to a vast underground city that the emperor built, complete with scenic towers, palaces, and whatnot. Sima Qian, a Han Dynasty historian, wrote that the tomb was adorned with treasures and had space for hundreds of officials, but the lack of technology to properly examine the site is what's holding things up. Qin Shi Huang was surrounded by liquid mercury in his tomb, with 2 of the streams representing the major rivers of China, Yellow River and Yangtze. The ancient Chinese believed that mercury could provide immortality, but it could have also caused the emperor's death since he regularly took mercury pills to prolong his life. The dangerous levels of mercury contamination in the soil near the tomb are the main reason why scientists are reluctant to explore it. It could be very dangerous both for people and for the environment. Now, if I had to choose which door to open, I'd probably go for the one that doesn't lead to a tomb surrounded by poisonous mercury. Call me crazy, but I'd like to avoid any potential health hazards.
Hidden in an Italian mountain range lies the Apennine Colossus. It might not have been on your travel list until now, but you'll be sure to add it once you hear its story. It's a massive statue located in Tuscany, Italy, that's been turning heads for centuries. It stands a staggering 36 feet tall, which is pretty impressive. The Apennine Colossus was designed as a personification of the Apennine Mountains and was created over 400 years ago by Francesco I de' Medici. And get this, the statue draws inspiration from Roman mythology. If you're lucky enough to visit the Villa Demidoff in Italy, you'll feel the sense of mystery and beauty of the Renaissance gardens, and you'll see the nearby Apennine Colossus seemingly in pain. But don't worry, the statue is doing just fine. It's managed by the local authorities of Florence and is open to the public. When you see the statue, you'll notice that it's depicted as an elderly man crouching down on the shore of the lake in a suggestive and realistic pose. It also seems to be squeezing the head of a sea monster, and water gushes out of the serpent's mouth into the pond in front of the statue. The statue also doesn't have any clothes on, and has stalactites in its thick beard. Its long hair shows the fusion of a man and a mountain. To add to the realism, the statue was once able to sweat and weep with water pouring through a network of pipes running through its body. In the winter, it would sometimes get covered with icicles. If you're planning a visit, the best idea is to take a bus from Florence. Now, the Alps have some secrets of their own. This next story involves a French mountaineer that struck it rich on Mont Blanc. But it wasn't your average gold nugget or diamond ring that he found. No, he stumbled upon a metal box packed to the brim with precious jewels worth about $250,000. Now you might be wondering how in the world such a treasure ended up on the shoulder of Western Europe's highest mountain. It turns out that these gems belonged to a passenger on one of the two Air India planes that crashed there, either in 1950 or 1966. Talk about a blast from the past. Now here's where things get really interesting. Our mountaineer, who was simply trying to conquer the summit, came across this hidden stash poking out of the ice and snow. He could have easily pocketed the loot and gone on his merry way, but instead he chose to do the right thing and turn it over to the local police. Authorities had to track down the original owner or their family, and it wasn't an easy task. You see, these jewels had been hidden away for over 50 years, and it's anyone's guess who they truly belong to. This isn't the first time that the Alps have given up some of their secrets, though. 1 year prior, two climbers found a bag of diplomatic mail from the same plane that had carried the precious jewels. It's amazing to think that all these years later, such artifacts are still popping up on the glacier. Of course, there is a downside to these types of events. Some worry that inexperienced climbers might try to reach the area in search of their own treasures. But let's be honest, folks, climbing areas like Mont Blanc is no walk in the park. It takes skill, experience, and endurance to conquer such a daunting peak. Pack your bags for our next destination, Greece. Have you heard of Davlos Cave? It's located in the Panteli Mountain, just a short distance northeast of Athens, and it's a total hotspot for spooky experiences. Visitors have reported water dripping upward, weird voices, electronics going out of control, glowing orbs, and more. One brave soul recounted venturing into the cave with his infrared camera. He captured what sounded like a choir of voices, chanting in ancient Greek, and even recorded unexplainable apparitions near the cave center. Feeling adventurous? Why not take a trip to Davlos Cave? After driving through a maze of slopes, you'll have to leave your vehicle at the beginning of a dirt road. After walking up the unmarked trail, you'll then enjoy the panoramic views of Athens stretching out to the nearby Gulf. Finally, after about 25 minutes, you'll see a crescent-shaped opening in the rock leading to the cave. Some people that have experienced walking toward the cave remember feeling an intense pull. Once in the cavern itself, they realized they couldn't go much further, as the tunnels leading from the cave had been blocked up. It shouldn't stop you from imagining all the spooky creatures that might be lurking in the shadows. Ooh. Hidden in the Carpathian mountain range in Romania is the Bucici Sphinx, a fascinating rock formation that looks a lot like its Egyptian counterpart. It's made from a huge block of stone that's been eroded by the wind over a really long time. Now here's where things get pretty cool. The Bucici Sphinx may only look like the Egyptian Sphinx from a certain angle, but that hasn't stopped people from coming up with all kinds of legends and myths about it. Some say that the Egyptian Sphinx was actually built based on the Bucici Sphinx, and that there's a time tunnel or energy corridor connecting the two. Others believe that life forms from outside our planet must have built the Sphinx and even established their base on the plateau in the Bucici Mountains. There's also a legend that claims the Bucici Sphinx has healing powers. On November 28th, at sunset, the sun's rays supposedly form an energy pyramid around the Sphinx's face, which has a healing effect on those who gather nearby. People come from all over the world to experience this phenomenon and receive good vibrations from the energy pyramid. Some even claim to have been healed by it. Others have claimed to hear the Beach Boys. You know, good vibrations. Never mind. Now, back when we had little knowledge of geology, people used to make up all sorts of stories of how mountains came to be. Mount Fuji makes no exception and has a fascinating myth behind it that's been told for generations in Asia. Once upon a time, there was a struggling farmer. The poor guy couldn't grow anything on his barren land, and his family was suffering. One fateful night, he was jolted awake by an earth-shattering sound. He thought it was the end of the world and woke his family to flee their hut. To their surprise, they witnessed the birth of a massive mountain, the mighty Mount Fuji. It was a miracle. The eruption created fertile soil, and the farmer, along with his family, could finally thrive. He even gave the mountain a cool name, Fujiyama, which translates to never-fading mountain. Japan is located in one of the most lively places on Earth. Yup, it's along the western edge of the Ring of Fire, a big horseshoe-shaped club that circles around the Pacific Ocean, the eastern side of Asia, and the western coast of the Americas. It's a pretty popular spot for all sorts of geological activity, you know, like volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. This may sound like a surprise, but Mount Fuji is actually a volcano. It has a pretty impressive resume, having erupted more than 15 times since the year 781. The last time it did, it was preceded by a massive earthquake of over 8 points on the Richter scale. That last eruption of Mount Fuji happened in 1707. It was so powerful that a nearby village was supposedly lost in the volcanic disaster. For centuries, nobody could confirm if the village ever existed. As time went by, new towns were built on top of the place where the remains of the settlement supposedly were. But in recent years, researchers dug deep and found some volcanic ash and charred remains of buildings, proving that the village and its destruction were, in fact, real. Now the mountain is considered dormant, having had its last signs of volcanic activity in the 1960s. Well, that's a relief.
Hey, I have an invitation for you. Pack your bags and let's head down to the world's most visited city, Paris. The city of love, the city of blinding lights, or whatever you want to call it. Our goal is to uncover as many secrets as possible regarding the world-famous Musée du Louvre. Are you up for it? Grab your travel book and bon voyage! The Louvre makes a big impression if you're visiting it for the first time. The traditional French Renaissance architecture is mixed with some modern elements, like the Louvre Pyramid. And that's our first stop today. To get inside the museum, you can go through the huge glass pyramid sitting right there in the Louvre's courtyard. If you're wondering what's the deal with this pyramid, let's stop here for a few minutes and learn some more about it. The Louvre Pyramid hasn't been here since the beginning. After all, the Louvre's main building, aka the Louvre Palace, dates back to 1190. But before it looked like what you see today, this place was a castle, full of moats and dungeons. And not dragons, because those aren't real, unfortunately. Anyways, the palace was commissioned by French King Philip II. Oh, and you can check out some of the medieval Louvre in the museum's basement. The Louvre only became a museum quite recently, historically speaking. In 1793, after the French Revolution, the nation decided that this building would be used to display France's prized collection of art. It wasn't until the 1980s that the idea of the glass pyramid came along. Then President François Mitterrand issued a big renovation of the Louvre. The project was called Grand Louvre, and it included the construction of a new entrance for visitors. By the 80s, the museum had already been receiving millions of visitors per year, and the entrance would often get crowded. And that's when foreign architect Io Ming Pei comes along. Mitterrand hired Pei to build an entrance that would connect the museum's 3 pavilions, and if you ask me, I'd say he did a pretty good job. We're talking about 200 tons of glass and iron. Not to mention that this glass, the so-called diamond glass, was specially designed to be completely transparent, without any green or blue tint to it. Pei wanted visitors to have a clear view of the main buildings without the glass interfering with it.
It took 2 years just to get the glass color right. It also took a while before Pei decided he was going to build a pyramid. He experimented with designing a cube and even a hemisphere. But since the original building doesn't have any curves, this would make the courtyard piece too out of context. So, he decided to build a pyramid instead, inspired by the ones in Egypt. After all, the Louvre holds an immense collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts, so that kind of makes sense. Just a wild guess here. The thing is, the French are pretty critical, and once the Louvre pyramid was finished in 1988, it became the center of a very heated debate. Public opinion was unsettled by such a modern construction. Today, people take all kinds of weird selfies with the pyramid, but back then, locals were saying that the modern architecture had nothing to do with the Louvre's Renaissance style, or even the history of the building. Some even said that the pyramid wasn't French enough. Yikes! Standing in line to get inside the Louvre, you can't help but wonder, how do people clean this huge glass pyramid? We're talking glass slopes, so this sure isn't an easy feat. In the beginning, the museum administration apparently hired mountaineers to climb it and clean it. And some still do this job nowadays when the robot built for this task can't clean all the dirty spots off the glass. I'm not joking. The Louvre pyramid is cleaned by a robot. You know what they say, the future is here. Once you're down the escalators, you'll notice that this awesome pyramid you were taking pictures with upstairs has an inverted face to it downstairs. It serves as a skylight to the Carousel du Louvre, which is like an underground shopping mall or the museum's main lobby. Hey, look, there's an Apple store, except that the French people pronounce it Apple. You'll have the option to choose from 3 different wings of the museum, the Richelieu, Sully, or Denim. I say we begin with Denim. You'll understand why in a bit. Did you know that the Louvre exhibits around 35,000 pieces of art? That's why it's virtually impossible to visit everything in one day. If you're an art lover, you'll have to come back here for more visits. But to see all the pieces of art spending around 30 seconds on each, you'd have to visit the Louvre over 100 times. And that's not counting restroom and lunch breaks. You get the picture, right? The museum is huge. That's why it takes about a 10-minute walk to get from the lobby entrance to the Louvre's most famous painting, the Mona Lisa. But since you're here early, you managed to take good pictures of this Da Vinci masterpiece. A little known fact, the Mona Lisa was once stolen from the Louvre. It was once stolen at night by a man called Vincenzo Peruggia. He was an employee of the museum, and investigators think he slept inside the Louvre to perform what is known as the greatest art theft of the 20th century. Apparently, the next morning, Vincenzo simply walked out of the museum with the Mona Lisa hidden among his belongings. The Mona Lisa was gone for almost 2 years until the painting was recovered in Italy. Who knows, maybe she enjoyed the trip back to her homeland. If you're an art history buff, you might know that the Mona Lisa has lots of theories revolving around it. The painting is shrouded in mystery, that's a fact. A strong case has been made that the Mona Lisa could be a self-portrait of Da Vinci himself. Historians have compared Da Vinci's face and that of the Mona Lisa, and guess what? They appear to be strikingly similar. Also, a 2010 study done by Italy's Committee for Cultural Heritage found that there is a collection of symbols hidden in the painting. These are only visible through highly technological magnifying lenses, but they showed that Leonardo inscribed an LV inside Mona Lisa's right eye. Experts guess that this is Da Vinci's signature, but the other symbols, a CE in the left eye and a 72 in the arch of the background bridge, are still a mystery. But enough about La Gioconda. We want to get to the Sully wing of the museum. Along the way, you'll see some people sitting in front of paintings with a drawing book or even a canvas. Is that allowed? Yup, this is a very interesting feature of the Musée du Louvre. The museum houses an art school called École du Louvre. The students of this school, as well as other Parisian institutions, can get permits to sit in front of paintings and copy them. This way, promising young artists can learn directly from the source. They copy the works of Renoir, Monet, and Poussin, trying to figure out the techniques these painters used. Can I sign up for this, please? To finish your tour, you're visiting the ancient moat we talked about earlier in this video. You know, the one that was part of the original Louvre when it was still a castle. Thanks to the archaeological excavations that happened in the 1980s, this part was uncovered and has been open for visitation since 2016. You can even see a miniature model of what the original castle looked like. And if you visited other landmarks in Paris, you'll notice that it's pretty similar to the Conciergerie. I wonder if they've ever thought about producing cheese down here. It seems like the perfect place. Oh well, I hope you enjoyed learning some secrets of the world's most famous museum. See you next time!
So, you've just finished your sightseeing tour of Edinburgh, Scotland, or Scotland. It lasted just under an hour, and you're hungry for more. You ask your guide if there's anything else to see, and they start talking about a mysterious underground city. You ask how long it takes to get there, and you're shocked by the guide's answer. You're standing on it. It's right under your feet. South Bridge? But you were just there and didn't notice a giant arrow pointing down. So this is where the mystery starts. The story begins in the mid-1700s. The Scottish capital wasn't as big as it is today. Only 60,000 people lived around Edinburgh Castle. All of them were packed inside medieval walls, and they say today's cities are overpopulated. Get a load of the living conditions back then. The buildings were tall, so there was little natural light. Some houses had 14 stories. Cows walked the narrow winding streets and left stock. Things were so bad that the famous English writer Daniel Defoe noted, "I believe that in no city in the world so many people have so little room." Yep, that's the guy who wrote Robinson Crusoe. Well, something just had to be done. The solution was to build 2 long bridges to the north and to the south of the city. The names they gave the bridges were more descriptive than colorful. The bridge to the north was completed first. In 1785, construction on the second bridge got underway. It was going to connect the main pedestrian street in the north with the university buildings in the south of Edinburgh. But don't think of this construction as a modern bridge over a river. It was more of a viaduct, a type of bridge that connects 2 hills across a valley. The word viaduct comes from Latin, as Romans were pioneers in building these structures. Their capital was built on 7 hills. And just to be copycats, Edinburgh also straddled 7 major hills. Only 2 are visible today because the city has been built up. Now, back in the 18th century, the construction of the South Bridge was a remarkable feat of engineering. It took the builders only 3 years to complete it. 19 stone arches spanned a chasm that was 31 feet at its deepest point, and the length over 1,000 feet. Impressive, even for today's standards. But what does a 2.5 centuries old viaduct have to do with an underground city? Well, it is the city. You see, they designed Southbridge to be hollow on the inside. As you walk along this street today, there is actually a huge human-made cave beneath your feet. The popular name for this set of chambers is the Edinburgh Vaults. But what was the purpose of this space? And is there something or someone there now? Well, let's take it one step at a time. The builder's original intention was for these vaults to serve as merchant shops. At first, it worked out fine. Merchants used a total of 120 vaults as shops and warehouses. There were workshops, cobblers, and taverns. But as time went by, a major design flaw came to light. The stone was leaking, and the vaults were damp all the time. There was even flooding. The builders forgot to waterproof the structure. The merchants feared the water would damage their precious goods. After just a couple of years, the first tenants started moving out. Once legal trade moved away from the vaults, the city's poor moved in. And not only them, but all sorts of shady characters. Historians don't know much about this period, since there are no written records. But even the squatters had to leave soon. If you couldn't do business in these vaults, how could you live in them? It was damp and cold, and there was no ventilation, sanitation, or natural light. It really stunk. Every real estate agent's worst nightmare. Just 30 years after their completion, the South Bridge vaults were abandoned once and for all. But at a street level, business was as usual. The officials decided to fill the vaults with rubble for security purposes. Buried and forgotten, the memory of a once teeming merchant quarter of Edinburgh slowly faded from people's minds. Now, this is where the story gets a bit weird. During the 1980s, a Scottish rugby player accidentally found a tunnel leading into the vaults. The athlete didn't waste any time and started excavating the vaults with the help of his son. Several tons of rubble, and a decade later, the South Bridge vaults have been restored to their former glory, so to speak. They were again dark and damp as they were back in the 1700s. There were many interesting finds in this underground city. The vaults were littered with oyster shells, which were the standard diet for a working-class resident of Edinburgh at the time. Other finds, such as shoes and empty bottles, suggested that people actually lived in these claustrophobic vaults. Think of this the next time you see someone trying to rent their garage as an apartment. So, your guide was right. There really is a hidden city under the streets of Edinburgh. Well, at least one street. You have now gone down from the main pedestrian street into Cowgate. You look up and there it is, the only visible arch of the once impressive bridge. You are now searching online to book a tour of the vaults. You just have to see this place with your own eyes. But the Scottish capital isn't the only city with a mysterious underground. The historic region of Cappadocia in central Turkey hides no less than 36 cities beneath the ground. The biggest and the most impressive one wasn't discovered until 1963. It was built during the Byzantine era to protect the local population from invaders. We have similar structures made out of concrete in our cities, but the level of the Turkish underground city is really impressive. There are several levels, like in a multi-story car garage. The caves and tunnels lie 197 feet underground. That's 2/3 of the Statue of Liberty's height. The city could house 20,000 people at any given time, complete with livestock and food. The smell. Anyway, 20,000 is the average attendance at Major League Soccer matches today. You might want to add a field trip to one of these places the next time you go to Turkey. Most of these cities in Cappadocia can be found in rural areas. Makes sense, right? After all, they were dug out as hiding places. But in Europe, there is one city whose underground labyrinth resembles the vaults of Edinburgh. You've probably heard of Pilsen in the Czech Republic. But hold on a second, this isn't going to be a story of the most famous local product. Something brewed, perhaps? It's the story of a medieval city that survived underneath the streets of Pilsen. Water wells, cellars, and passageways stretched for more than 12 miles. Merchants and craftspeople used Pilsen's historical underground for storage. Water, food, ice, you name it. The waterworks are pretty impressive. Historians estimate that 360 wells are located under Pilsen's historical town center. In times of instability, the passageways served as safe havens for the locals. They definitely didn't go thirsty down there. Today, most tourists visit these mysterious underground cities. But in Canada, there's one where people live and work. The construction of Montreal's underground city began in 1962. The initial idea was to shelter traffic. That's a nice way to say that city officials were building a metro station. The idea caught on and the project expanded. Now, it's a real-life urban maze hidden under the downtown area. Need a place to stay? There are hotels down there. Want to grab a bite? Step into one of the underground restaurants. Multiple shops, a library, cinemas, the list is long. There are even residential complexes. But how can people live under the ground? Simple. Although the city itself lies beneath the earth, the access points are at ground level. You can enter the 20-mile-long tunnel network at more than 120 places. Oh, that's another place down under. Oops, sorry, Australia.
The tranquil-looking Lake Manaun in Cameroon is one real trickster. At first, it may seem calm and peaceful, but this lake is like a fiery volcano waiting to erupt at any moment. And it doesn't even have the decency to give any warning signs. Its last outburst was way back in 1984, which caused a bang that left everyone in awe. It's like the lake's got a soda can mechanism down there, or in technical terms, it experiences a limnic eruption. This rare phenomenon happens when gas from deep under the water suddenly erupts. Certain things have to happen prior for it to occur though. There are some things you can look out for if you feel worried. For starters, if the vegetation around a lake looks a bit flattened, it might have previously experienced a limnic eruption. That's because the water can pop up with a lot of pressure and overflow. The water being a bit warmer all of a sudden can also mean you need to head to safety. There's this lake in Kazakhstan that looks like a total disaster on the surface, with empty tree trunks sticking out of the water. Not cute. But if you're feeling daring and want to take a swim, you'll be transported to a whole new world. Its story goes back to the year 1911, when there was a landslide that filled the valley with rainwater, completely submerging a local forest. As mesmerizing as it might sound, it's no easy task to dive in. The water is freezing, and all the algae, plants, and submerged trees make it a risky obstacle course. Have you heard about this scorching lake on the sunny Caribbean island of Dominica? The water around the edges is at a sweltering 180 to 197 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder no one has the guts to measure the middle. It's that hot. Sure, the heat may go down once in a while, but who knows when those waters will start boiling again? Plus, this place is full of nasty gases like carbon dioxide. Because of them, let's just say it doesn't exactly smell like roses, more like rotten eggs. So unless you want to end up looking like a boiled lobster, I suggest you stay away from these waters. If you're planning a trip to Tanzania, you might want to think twice before diving into Natron Lake. Sure, it's got a beautiful reddish hue, but that's thanks to some bacteria that call this lake home. And don't even get me started on the pH levels. They're so high they might even strip the color off your swimsuit. But hey, at least the flamingos like it there. Those acid-loving birds are living their best lives in a group with 2.5 million of their closest feathered friends. How come these birds manage to thrive there, you might wonder? Well, no predators means no stress, which equals easy breeding. They also love feasting on that fancy bacteria, which makes the water all pink. You may think that Belize's Great Blue Hole is just calling out to you with its stunning blue hues and close proximity to land. But hold your flippers, because there's a catch. Sure, it's about 900 feet across and 300 feet deep, but lurking beneath the surface is a confusing patterns of tunnels filled with coral and wildlife. It's like finding your way through a maze at a theme park, but with more fish. And as if that wasn't tricky enough, the deeper you go, the fewer creatures you'll encounter. Why, you ask? Well, it turns out that there's a sneaky layer of hydrogen sulfide that covers the entire width of the hole, depriving any living creature of oxygen. Plan on heading to the Devil's Kettle waterfall in Minnesota? This one won't necessarily be dangerous for you, but you might end up losing some of your stuff out there if you don't pay attention. That's because this waterfall experiences a phenomenon that's a real head-scratcher for geologists. One part of the waterfall flows normally, while the other part disappears into a big ol' hole. And get this, not even ping pong balls can make it out. Scientists decided to investigate, and they went all out, even using GPS trackers. Initially, they couldn't figure it out until they realized that the hole acts like a giant blender. That water is getting spun around so hard, it's basically obliterating everything in its path. They finally measured the water volume and saw that it was still there, so it was supposed to come back out somewhere. The most likely explanation is that the water is probably re-emerging in the stream located beneath the waterfall. You've surely heard of the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, that's old news. But let me tell you about the Pacific's very own watery trap called the Devil's Sea. It's like a game of hide and seek, but with ships. They disappear and we can never find them again. The Kayo Maru No. 5 was on a mission to investigate a volcanic island, but the trip ended up being just one way. Add a dash of detective work to the subject and you'll find out the whole story about the Devil's Sea is more myth and less fact, but it doesn't make it any less interesting. If you're still interested in some mysterious ship disappearance, then Lake Superior is the place you'll want to read about. Even the most skilled scuba divers can't find a single piece of all of those lost vessels. The main character of this lake story was a ship called the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, the biggest one to sink in the Great Lakes. To this day, people aren't sure why it sank. So, you're planning a little swim in one of the Great Lakes, huh? Well, might want to steer clear of Lake Michigan, unless you're really into extreme water sports. This bad boy has a reputation for being the most dangerous of the bunch, thanks to some sneaky undercurrents that like to snatch unsuspecting swimmers. Make sure to watch out for those pesky piers and docks that only add to the lake's swimming difficulty. If you're feeling adventurous, you might want to skip the months of October or November. This is when the temperatures start to drop and the currents get extra wild. Tibet has its dangerous lake too, and at first glance, it's gorgeous. But don't get too excited. It's got a salt content so high that nothing can survive in it. Some villagers around there actually consider it to be tainted with some sort of substance. The cherry on top? Other locals believe there's a selfish creature living in the lake who's hogging up all the space for itself. No wonder its nickname is Darkness. No list of dangerous waters is complete without Lake Victoria, the big kahuna of African lakes and the third biggest in the whole wide world. But beware, not all its waters are safe for us humans. Some regions can be real troublemakers because this lake has its own personal climate. And what does that mean? Mostly that you can't trust the weather here one bit. You could be soaking up some sweet rays one second, and the next you're running from a torrential downpour. Unless you want to be caught swimming in a storm, steer clear of this moody lake. You might have already seen pictures of Lake Hillier. It's like a giant pool of grapefruit juice in Australia. Scientists have been scratching their heads over it for centuries because they still can't figure out with certainty why it's pink. But here's the kicker, it's not the only one. Yep, there's another pink lake out there called Lake Retba. Both of these lakes have super high salt content, which is apparently a magnet for some fancy microorganisms. These little guys produce beta-carotene, you know, the substance that's in carrots, and that's what gives these lakes their groovy colors. Interested in swimming in this lake? It's not technically dangerous because the water has such high amounts of salt in it. There are no scary sea creatures to worry about. But, on the other hand, you'll need to make sure you don't accidentally take a sip. Drinking highly salted water will make you dehydrate faster than a plant in the desert.
Now, if you're as watchful as I am, you've probably noticed those zigzag patterns on the edges of some packages, like bags of chips or chocolate bars. It's clear that they're there to make it easier for you to tear the plastic. But why does it tear so easily? Now, plastic is made of long molecules called polymers. You can compare it with a fabric made of long threads. But the scale is much smaller, and these strands aren't actually woven together. What ridges do is remove the support of the surrounding polymer fibers. When the edge is flat, the molecules are surrounded and kind of protected by their mates. But if the edge is uneven, molecules on the peaks of the ridges are much more exposed to mechanical damage. Plus, such an uneven edge allows you to apply more force to a specific point, the groove. And once that point fails, the groove moves to the next point, causing more tearing. And this process continues until you stop applying the force or until you're done tearing the packaging apart. But this isn't the only packaging secret. I'm about to reveal the most unexpected packaging facts. Now, is this what the future of packaging looks like? A Swiss company has invented a magic juice box. It's made of agar-agar seaweed gel and water. It can only contain short-term smoothies and juices. The box also withers at the same rate you consume the product inside. Wow, doesn't it sound like the future is here? That overwhelming smell of coffee that literally hits you once you open a jar with instant coffee? This scent is actually just a coffee aroma sprayed onto the lid. It's done to provide you with the enticing smell of freshly ground coffee. One of Korea's leading manufacturers of instant noodles has come up with innovative packaging for their production. It can be safely used in microwaves. The company claims that some additional material used in this packaging can remain intact without melting, even at high temperatures. Well, it'll definitely make the process of heating up your lunch much faster. Now, almost all food we consume has an expiration date, but this rule doesn't apply to water. But how come there's an expiration date on every water bottle? There's no paradox here. This expiration date refers to the bottle, not the water inside. They say that regardless of the brand, all chips have a best before date that ends on a Saturday. It's because a production week starts on a Sunday and correspondingly ends on a Saturday. Well, I've checked my stash, and it seems to be true. Go look at yours and write in the comments what you found out. Bubble wrap was originally designed to serve as textured wallpaper. It was invented in 1957 by engineers Mark Chavons and Alfred Fielding in New Jersey. They sealed together two shower curtains, trapping inside a smattering of air bubbles, and wanted to sell the resulting product as an innovative kind of wallpaper. Unfortunately, the product turned out to be a failure as wallpaper. Then the inventor started selling it as greenhouse insulation. But it wasn't until 1961 that the material's protective qualities were discovered, and the first client that used bubble wrap as a packaging material was IBM. This company used it to protect its big IBM 1401 mainframe computer during shipment. Now, people love personalized products. According to researchers, a whopping 52% of online customers are more willing to repeat their purchases from a company when they get personalized shipping boxes. If you've ever seen someone unboxing Apple products, you probably noticed that the company used very laconic packaging. This probably made you think that they put no effort into it, but that's not true. To achieve such a level of perfect simplicity, Apple has created a real culture around its packaging. The company's headquarters even have a special place where they come up with packaging designs for new products. The egg carton was designed in 1911 by newspaper editor Joseph Coyle from British Columbia. The main goal of this invention was to resolve a dispute between a local farmer and a hotel owner who kept complaining that the farmer's eggs were delivered broken. So, necessity is the mother of invention. Nike has created a shoe box made completely out of recycled trash materials, mainly drink containers. This box also allows its owner to wear it as a backpack. Now, paper packaging for food goes all the way back to China, to the 2nd century BCE. At that time, food was often wrapped in thin sheets of mulberry bark, and later, the idea spread all over the world. And in 1879, one accident literally changed history. A worker from a paper bag factory in Brooklyn set the machine he used to the wrong settings, and instead of creasing small bags, it cut through them. When the owner of the factory readjusted the settings on the machine, he realized that it could cut and crease at the same time. This led to the appearance of mass-produced paperboard boxes. Now, researchers have found out that the process used during the manufacturing of cardboard boxes can ward off germs. Hear me out. To make cardboard, they shape layers of paper and bond them at a temperature of up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than most harmful bacteria can withstand. That's why cardboard boxes are a rather safe way to package foods. After all, they come out of the manufacturing process sanitized, even when they're made of recycled materials. That little open jar icon on cosmetic packaging is the PAO, period after opening symbol. It informs consumers about the period of time a product may be used after the package is unsealed. The symbol, featuring a number followed by the letter M for months, can be seen on almost all cosmetic products. Some plastic milk containers have dents on their sides. These dents serve several purposes. For one thing, when the milk spoils, this process usually causes swelling and high-pressure buildup inside the container. That's when the dent comes in handy. It pops out and doesn't let the jug blow up. Plus, if you decide to freeze the milk, it will expand like any other liquid. And then again, the indentation will pop out and prevent the container from breaking inside your freezer. Soda bottles are always filled in such a way that there's some space between the liquid and the cap. That's because soda contains carbon dioxide. It's a gas that can expand once the bottle is heated. If there's no gap in the bottle, it can break because of the pressure building inside. Also, when you open your drink, the gases go out in the form of bubbles, and the drink is likely to overflow. The gap helps with this problem too. Now, about those horizontal lines on plastic bottles. They help hold bottles up. Some bottles are produced from soft plastic. Without the lines, they wouldn't keep their shape. Instead, they would twist easily or even break. Number 57 on a Heinz ketchup bottle has nothing to do with the product label. The truth is that the place with the numbers is the very sweet spot you should tap to get the ketchup flowing. So stop smacking the bottom of your sauce bottle and tap the 57. By the way, if you've been wondering why the number is exactly 57, not 34 or 89, this comes from the historical advertising slogan 57 Variety, created by the Heinz Company located in Pittsburgh, USA. This advertising campaign told customers about the numerous products manufactured by the company. Now, at first sight, everything is obvious about plastic lids on disposable cups to keep your beverage inside, right? But that's not all they're capable of. As soon as you find a cozy spot and get ready to sip on your drink, you can use the lid as a coaster. If you look carefully, you'll notice special ridges that hug the bottom of your cup snugly. It's a snuggly hug. The size of each lid fits the bottom of the corresponding cup. And the soft round part under a soda bottle cap keeps the carbonation from escaping. Without it, your pop would go flat in no time, probably even before you buy it. A species of millipede made musical headlines this year. Yep, you heard that right. It's called the Taylor Swift millipede, as was recently discovered in 2022. The scientists behind this finding are said to have named this little critter after the famous singer. They became really attached to her music in their younger years and thought it was a nice homage. The Taylor Swift millipede joins the list of 16 similar creatures found in the Appalachian Mountains of the United States. Obviously, the rest of them aren't as famous. This wasn't an easy discovery either. These invertebrates are extremely hard to find in their natural habitat, since they spend little to no time above the ground. They'd prefer to stay hidden beneath the soil. Since they feed on decaying vegetation, they play a key role in the local natural cycle. Another recently discovered species made headlines since it was named after a famous Swedish activist, Greta Thunberg. Her namesake is a frog that lives in eastern Panama. These minuscule frogs live and spend much of their life hidden in bromeliads, which are leafy plants attached to local trees. They hardly ever travel, even sleeping and laying their eggs tucked away. Their most distinctive feature is the fact that they have black eyes, which is unusual for frogs living in Central America. Now, how about a chocolate frog? No, it's not the snack from Harry Potter. It's a real species. This unusual-looking creature was stumbled upon quite recently in the regions of the Peruvian Amazon. It's also nicknamed the tapir frog because it resembles this big boy. It has a lot to do with the fact that this frog has a long snout. Like other recently discovered species, chocolate frogs are hard to find and study. But it does speak volumes about the incredible biodiversity we've yet to discover from the Amazon area. A new species of cockroach was discovered this year in Asia. It was stumbled upon by local authorities when they were looking at logs transported from French Guiana. It might be interesting for local scientists But this new species needs to be carefully studied as it may be dangerous. When looking at existing records of local cockroaches, local specialists did not find anything similar. They proceeded to study the new insect's DNA and confirmed it was a newly discovered species. Specialists working at customs control around the world continuously monitor deliveries for unknown insects, since they may carry diseases. More so, cockroaches are known to be very adaptable and damaging creatures to new environments. Not to mention they also multiply quite rapidly. To preserve local biodiversity, when insects happen to travel from one location to another, they need to be intensively studied to see if preventative measures need to be taken. Now, at the start of 2022, a marine biologist stumbled upon a beautiful sea creature. It was later named the blanket octopus, and from what we know so far, it lives off the coast of the Great Barrier Reef. This beautiful-looking creature got its name because of its rainbow-like appearance. In most species, the male tends to be larger than the female, but this is not the case for this gorgeous creature. In fact, a female blanket octopus can stretch to 6 feet long, while most gentlemen in this species are less than 1 inch in length on average. Yeah, that is bigger. Another beautifully colored creature living in our waters was recently discovered in the Maldives. It's called the rose-veiled fairy wrasse. This one got its name after the local national flower, which is the pink rose. In all fairness, this fish species is really like the red velvet fairy wrasse, but it does differ a bit in terms of coloring. It's not the first time we've seen it, but it's the first time we've studied it long enough to know they are 2 distinct species altogether.
They are 2 distinct species.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Discovered recently by Irish and Indonesian researchers, the Wakatobi sunbird is a small creature resembling a hummingbird. It has a cool color pattern: blue feathers on the neck, yellow feathers on the belly, and brown feathers on the back and top of the head. The reason why it's named a sunbird is that its feathers shine like they're covered in glitter in the sunlight. We rarely discover new species of mammals these days, let alone large ones, but the southern maned sloth is quite the exception. It was initially believed that maned sloths are part of a single species. Turns out they divide into 2 distinct categories, northern and southern. They're both found in the Brazilian Atlantic forest. A new owl species called Principe scoops owl was also recently announced by specialists. The main thing that drew researchers to conclude it is a new type of bird is the distinctive sound that it makes. Its call starts with a short "too" sound. It is then shortly followed by other noises that resemble insect calls. Some owls make this call as a duet at nightfall. The name comes from the location it has been discovered in, which is Principe Island, part of the Democratic Republic of São Tomé and Principe. If you want to visit, you'll have to head to the coast of Central Africa. After looking all over the island, the team behind its discovery found out they only roam a small portion of an already small island. It's easy to estimate there are only a limited number of specimens, so the species has been immediately classified as critically endangered. This year, Europeans also introduced their brand new species of slug, and it's quite impressive too, given it can be as large as a carrot. It features a brown-grayish color and was named the giant keelback slug. The international team responsible for identifying this new species spent a lot of time exploring the Terra Canyon in Montenegro. An international team of citizen scientists were taking part in a field trip by Taxon Expeditions, and they were exploring Terra Canyon in Montenegro, which is Europe's largest and deepest canyon. Now, technically, the Venezuelan poodle moth is yet to be officially identified and fully studied. But ever since it was first photographed in 2009, the internet went crazy over its appearance. This tiny insect looks like a combination between a Furby and a gargoyle, but in an extremely cute way. We do know it might live in the Gran Sabana region of Venezuela, but apart from that, there's little to no information on these moths. Scientists have yet to pinpoint exactly its insect family, but they do suspect it might be a combination of varied species, like a mutant. Another fun fact, That fur they wear is made of soundproofing cellulose. So, if you think about it, their coat is made of sugar. The sponge crab must be one of the most elegant aquatic creatures discovered this year. It has a sponge middle and a fluffy coat, and was recently stumbled upon after a specimen was found washed up on a beach in Denmark, Western Australia. The people that found it on a beach were nice enough to send it over to researchers at Western Australian Museum, so that it could be properly identified and studied. To their surprise, this creature did not seem to resemble anything that was previously documented. Nimba bats got their name from the Nimba Mountains, in which they were recently discovered. To visit this region, you'll have to book a trip to West Africa. They are also called bright orange bats because of their uniquely colored furry wings. Along with other similar species, they can be only found in this specific region, so it's crucial to maintain their habitat to make sure they don't become endangered. These guys are named nanochameleons, and by their name, you can already tell they're not the largest reptiles. Also recently discovered in Madagascar, the male nanochameleons are amongst the smallest male reptiles in the world. The female chameleon is a bit larger, but it too doesn't stretch longer than 1 inch, including its tail. Because their natural habitat is very limited in size, there's still a lot we don't know about them, as they've proven quite hard to study. Yeah, they're shy.
Could there be a place on Earth that could take you to another dimension? In 1997, a phone on an American radio show rang. The employee picked up the phone and got probably one of the most unusual calls in his career. A man on the other end of the line introduced himself as Mel Waters. He started a story about how he discovered a pretty unusual hole on the rural property he owned that was near Ellensburg, Washington. I used a fishing line and a weight to measure it. According to my calculations, it's 80,000 feet deep, Mel claimed. And some weird paranormal things have been going on here. He was talking about a black beam that could come out of the hole and shoot into the sky during certain day periods. He believed the hole had magical powers, like restoring life in animals and allegedly setting ice on fire. Yep, the ice in question didn't melt. It burned like coal. The call went public. Mel managed to convince many listeners his story was true. One geologist, named Jack Powell, was especially interested in the story he had heard on the radio. He found it somewhat curious, particularly because Mel claimed it was basically the bottomless pit. Jack was in geology for decades, and he was familiar with the fact that the deepest shaft goes a bit over 40,000 feet below the surface. Jack started to investigate that mysterious case, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the hole. Further investigation led to the fact that they later couldn't even find a person named Mel Waters that lived close to Ellensburg, Washington. After the phone call went public, the mysterious Mel even claimed some tried to pay him off to stop talking about the hole. This whole story became an urban legend. Later, many people claimed they found that hole and saw weird things happening there. They heard strange noises coming out of the hole. Others saw lights and unusual creatures coming out of the hole, and some believe the hole goes all the way down to the center of our planet, whereas others go so far to think it's a secret portal to another dimension. A few people think Mel's hole is a spot where space and time are warped. People or objects that enter it never come back, and no one sees them ever again. Of course, those are all just different theories. After all, no one still knows if Mel's hole even exists or not. That deepest hole in the world we've mentioned before, the one that actually exists, is called Kola Super Deep Borehole, and it's human-made. It's covered and welded shut, and it sits among the abandoned ruins of one project site. It took people who made it around 20 years to reach that many miles under the surface. What stopped them at such depths are 2.7 billion-year-old rocks. They were at temperatures of about 356 degrees Fahrenheit, which was almost twice as hot as the team thought it would be. A hole this deep may seem like something from horror movies, but here's something that will comfort you. It's just 9 inches in diameter. That means you can't just wander around and accidentally fall inside of it, which, you have to admit, makes it a bit less scary after all. But many locals are still very afraid of it and are not comfortable with this hole. Many of them claim they hear terrifying screams at night coming out of it. If you decide to enter Krubera Cave, one of the deepest ones on the Earth, know that it could take days or even weeks to reach the bottom. This massive cave complex is located in Georgia, and it goes over a mile under the surface. It even got the nickname of being the Everest among other cave systems. The cave system looks really scary. Imagine going down there. But it's also home to a fascinating diversity of wildlife. There's also a basin filled with water at its bottom. The Berkeley Pit is a toxic hole. It's a former open-pit copper mine located in the western part of the United States. The hole is a mile long and half a mile wide. It's 1,780 feet deep, which is taller than the Empire State Building, and nearly half of it is filled with heavily acidic water. It has a similar level of acidity to gastric acid or lemon juice. This pit is full of dangerous chemicals and heavy metals. The water at the surface is red because of all those heavy metals that float around, like breadcrumbs in this poisonous soup. This soup has ended the lives of many birds that tried to land in the water at some point. If you want, you can even go there, pay the ticket, and check the pit out from a safe distance. It's a perfect day. It's not cloudy, the sun is out, and you're in the tropics, swimming in the sea. The water is crystal clear. So clear, it seems like you could see the bottom of where you're swimming. You look down and all you can see is darkness. The bottom is deep down below you, and if your imagination runs wild, you'll see giant sea monsters coming from down there right away. And that's how it feels to be above Dean's Blue Hole. It's nearly circular at the surface, but if you dive a bit deeper, it suddenly widens into a 4 times wider cavern. It's located on Long Island in the Bahamas, and it goes 663 feet below the surface, which makes it the second deepest hole in the world. It's a sinkhole filled with salt water that has an entrance below the water level. Such sinkholes can form in different processes. For instance, when rainwater soaks through fractures of limestone bedrock directly onto the water table. And in the case of this pit, the sea level has changed too. It got higher compared to, let's say, the Ice Age from 15,000 years ago. This one is Mount Baldy Sinkhole in Indiana. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon. A woman named Erin was on Mount Baldy, just finishing her scientific study of wind speeds. She was happy with how things were going, but suddenly, a bad hunch erased the smile off her face. She turned around and saw a man in his swim trunks. He was desperately clawing at the sand. "He's right here!" he yelled, while his wife was near him, panicking and in shock. Their 6-year-old son had disappeared, simply vanished down a hole. Erin didn't see any sign of an opening. She saw no upturned sand, which you'd expect to see if a person had just dug a hole. More and more people were coming to help, and someone called 911. She couldn't believe that something like that could happen. She thought their son was just hiding somewhere around, waiting to jump out and surprise them. So she went home. But later, she saw it on the news. The rescue team had managed to save their son. They found him 11 feet under the surface of a dune, and it was a complete shock for her. We're in such an advanced era when the robotic arms of spaceships scoop sand on Mars and then tell us its chemistry. And here, you can take a simple walk to the beach and still end up surprised by such geologic mysteries, like a hole that appears out of nowhere. Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory looks like a hole you'd see in some scary science fiction movies. This Antarctic research station is located at the South Pole and 3 times as large as the world's tallest building. This enormous hole made of metal and ice is frozen and isolated, and it reaches depths of around 8,200 feet. Scientists hope to use it to understand neutrino particles better, and through that, learn more about dark matter. It's the mysterious substance that makes up almost 30% of the universe. No one can see it directly, but scientists assume it's there. They believe it affects the movements of stars and galaxies. You must have noticed those lines on some kinds of chips. For one thing, they help with the distribution of spices and seasonings. In other words, all those substances that make your chips taste like cheese are mostly stored inside the lines. Plus, the lines make chips crunchier. Some cars have a tiny coffee cup sign on their dashboard. It's the vehicle's anti-drowsiness mechanism. There are manufacturers that equip their cars with a drowsiness detection system. It analyzes the speed, wheel angle, and lane deviations to figure out if it's time for the driver to take a break. If it is, the vehicle makes several audio signals, and the coffee cup sign starts to flash. Some plastic milk containers have dents on their sides. These dents serve several purposes. For one thing, when milk spoils, this process usually causes swelling and high pressure buildup inside the container. That's when the dent comes in handy. It pops out and doesn't let the jug blow up. Plus, if you decide to freeze the milk, it will expand like any other liquid. And then again, the indentation will pop out and prevent the container from breaking inside your freezer. You might have wondered why jerry cans have 3 handles. It's a clever designer move. This way, if you carry the container alone, you can use only the central handle to distribute the weight evenly. But if your friend wants to help you out, each of you can grab the side handle. The first jeans had a problem. Workers and miners, who were the original jeans wearers, put too much pressure on the poor piece of clothing. As a result, the seams couldn't withstand the stress and tore. Tiny metal studs were invented to prevent this from happening. Sticky notes come off relatively easily because their adhesive is spread out across the paper unevenly, in small blobs. And only some of these blobs touch the surface of whatever you've stuck the note on. That's why when you unstick a Post-it and attach it to something else, it still works, until all the glue gets used or covered with dirt. Soda bottles are always filled in such a way that there's some space between the liquid and the cap. That's because soda contains carbon dioxide. It's a gas that can expand once a bottle is heated. If there's no gap in the bottle, it can break because of the pressure building inside. Also, when you open your drink, the gases go out in the form of bubbles, and the drink is likely to overflow. The gap helps with this problem too. Dental floss is super useful for your teeth, but it might be rather hard to operate. It regularly slips out of your fingers and tangles. To avoid these problems, tear off a piece of dental floss and tie its 2 ends together. It'll be much easier to use and won't hurt your fingers. Now, about those horizontal lines on plastic bottles. They help hold bottles up. Some bottles are produced from soft plastic. Without the lines, they wouldn't keep their shape. Instead, they would twist easily or even break. The soft round part under a soda bottle cap keeps the carbonation from escaping. Without it, your pop would go flat in no time, probably even before you buy it. If you don't have anywhere to put a toothpick after using it, break off its flat end at the first groove and place it on the table. Now, you can balance the used portion of your toothpick on the grooved part so that it doesn't have to touch the table. You can also make a makeshift stand for disposable chopsticks. They have a sort of lump on one side. Break that lump off before you split the pair. Now, when you want to take a sushi break, just place the stick on this stand. Donuts are shaped like rings because otherwise they might get overdone at the edges, but uncooked and gooey inside. With a hole in the center, both the outside and the inside get ready at the same time. Ever notice that layer of clear fluid in gel pens? It's called the ink follower, or stopper fluid. The gel in such pens contains pigment particles dissolved in a polymer solution. The gel should be thick enough to keep the pigment particles suspended, but also thin enough to flow first onto the ball and then the paper. The main task of the stopper fluid is to be a barrier to prevent the gel from evaporating or leaking out. Without this transparent fluid, your gel pen wouldn't function. The fluid always stays in one position and doesn't get dissolved with the gel. Neither does it move backward or flow out of the pen. Some button-down shirts have a button hidden on the back of the collar. Its main purpose is to prevent the tie from sticking out from under the collar. As for that locker loop on the back, you can use it to hang the shirt on a hook to avoid wrinkling it. Outer rings and zipper sliders, especially when two sliders are used together, are added so that you can connect them with a lock and keep sticky fingers away. Most ambulance cars have this word printed on the front of the vehicle. That's the word ambulance backward. It's written in reverse so that the driver in front of the ambulance can see the word properly in their rearview mirror. Then they can move out of the way and let the ambulance pass. Escalator brushes serve an important safety purpose. You might have heard that most accidents happen after people get their bags or clothes stuck in escalators because they stand too close to the sides. But when there are nylon brushes on both sides, you can't but keep your feet away from the escalator's skirt panels. The result? No accidents. The side holes in sneakers are for laces. Since sneakers were originally invented for basketball players, this interesting design allowed them to accommodate any player's foot. They just needed to lace their sneakers in the most comfortable way for them. The holes in the bottoms of your earphones allow air to circulate up and through the speakers. It helps to increase low frequencies, making the bass sound deeper. The quality of the sound also becomes much better. Ever been stranded with a cup of applesauce, but no spoon at hand? But each snack pack already has a built-in spoon. Several twists of the foil lid, and here you go. Diamond slits on backpacks were originally placed only on traveler bags. Their purpose was to carry ropes. These days, you can find such slits on almost every backpack. Why not use them to carry a bottle of water, an umbrella, or a pair of sneakers? Highlighters are filled with a special semi-transparent fluorescent ink that can glow in dim light. Yellow and light green hues are the most popular because they don't prevent you from seeing the text after black and white photocopying. Photocopiers perceive yellow and light green marks as almost non-existent and don't print them. A stop sign has an octagonal shape to help drivers recognize it easily, even if they see it from the back. When the signs weren't reflective yet, this shape prevented drivers from confusing the stop sign with any other at night. The number 57 on a Heinz ketchup bottle has nothing to do with the product label. The truth is that the place with the numbers is the very sweet spot you should tap to get the ketchup flowing. So stop hitting the bottom of your sauce bottle and hit 57. Lots of private houses have triangular-shaped roofs because this allows rain, snow, and fallen leaves to slide off the slope. If all this stuff piled up on top of your house, one day your roof would collapse. Airplane windows have rounded edges, and that's a crucial safety measure. It prevents aircraft accidents. Weak spots are usually situated in the corners. If airplane windows were square or rectangular, each of them would have 4 potential weak spots. Under pressure, they would collapse.
Pilots can't eat similar meals when they're working. Imagine that you're on a transoceanic flight. The airplane is flying over the Pacific Ocean. Flight attendants deliver the dinner meals. Everyone is enjoying the pasta. The sauce tastes a bit funny though. That's probably okay. After all, you are eating an aircraft meal. It can't taste like a 5-star chef plate. Time goes by. Oh no! You were right! Something was indeed wrong with the food. But if all the passengers have the same problem, so do the pilots. To prevent both of them being out of order, pilots are advised not to eat the same meal at the same time. In such a scenario, if one pilot feels bad, the other one can take over. I mean, this is not an imperative rule stated by the Federal Aviation Administration, but most airlines make their own rules about this matter. Flight attendants have access to hidden equipment, such as a defibrillator, supplemental oxygen, a fire extinguisher, and duct tape. But probably the most interesting gear they have is handcuffs. These objects are there to protect passengers from others, and sometimes from themselves. Turns out that flight attendants have everything they need to defuse a troublemaker. Aviator sunglasses look cool on pilots in movies, but in real life, they don't wear polarized glasses. First off, they have a glare-reducing effect. This can cause some trouble in the cockpit. A pilot has to read instruments, but the stuff in the cockpit, such as LCD displays, emits polarized light. So a pilot with those cool polarized glasses can't read the displays with 100% efficiency. Pilots shouldn't wear these glasses simply because of safety concerns. Imagine a shimmer of glare coming from another plane's windscreen, but the pilot missed the sign because of polarized sunglasses. Ever noticed a hole in the tail of an airplane? Well, most commercial airplanes have it. Next time you get into an airplane, take a closer look. The hole has a fancy name, Auxiliary Power Unit. It looks like a hole from the outside, but that is actually a hidden turbine engine. Most of the time, the APU will remain off for the entire flight. It will start working when the plane lands. It provides power to the cabin lights, air conditioning, and cockpit electronics. Don't underestimate the APU's power, though. It can also provide the power required to start the main engines. You've watched a Brightside video and learned what the APU is. A perfect icebreaker. Unfortunately, you're not in a chatty mood. You just want to take the plane, land, and start your vacation. Yet again, there is only one door to board. You are at the end of a queue. Why don't planes generally have multiple doors? According to the experts, the biggest issue is that the bridge takes up a lot of space. When an aircraft is loaded from the front and the rear, it takes up 2 slots. This is not ideal for the administrators. Newly remodeled or constructed terminals tend to have dual boarding compared to the older terminals. Change of scenery, let's jump into a cruise ship. There are hidden passageways and secret doors in ships. These secrets are from an insider. Staff on the ship mostly work in their designated area. How does a worker get from one place to another without using the stairs and doors that the passengers use? There is a network of corridors and stairs all around the ship, used only by the crew. I mean it when I say secret doors. They blend with the walls, so they go undetected by those who don't know where the door is. Maybe you can stumble by accident. Here is a clue. Pay attention to the walls near the guest stairs. Try to think of those gigantic cruise ships as floating metals. This leads me to a cruise cabin fun fact. The walls of the cruise ship cabin are magnetic. Imagine you're traveling to multiple countries on board a cruise ship, a single-month voyage. You collect destination-themed magnets and decorate your cabin. True cruise fans know this magnet magic, so they put a couple of magnetic hooks into their luggage. Neat tip, use magnetic hooks to add extra storage in your cabin. Hang clothes and accessories, postcards, or hats. Speaking of ships, why do some ships and boats have small holes constantly releasing water? To keep the bilge free of water. Water builds up over time inside the bilge, and the bilge pump automatically pumps the water out again. Ships don't have headlights. Using a headlight could prevent accidents. If they work for cars, why not for ships? Headlights are the source of light, but the light that comes out of them bounces back at the light source at some point. With cars, for instance, headlights work because the area you want lit is narrow, and you can easily take action if you see an obstacle on the road. For ships, this is super hard. The light source should be powerful enough to light the area the captain wants to see. Large cargo ships, for instance, need more than a mile to stop or take action. Plus, imagine how much brighter should the ship's light be to light the whole area in front of it. They do see each other with different sorts of lights called navigation lights. These are small but practical. They arrange it in a standardized way so that ships could see each other. The exciting thing is that they don't just notice one another in the dark, they also understand each other's movements and directions. Here's an example. Imagine a ship with two nav lights. The one on the front is lower, near the ship floor. The other one on the back is high up. This means the vessel goes to the right. It can safely pass by the other ships without hitting them. Trains don't have seatbelts. A bit weird. Every time there is a crash related to trains, this matter comes up. Pretty much nowhere in the world seatbelts are used on trains. Various studies have been made about this issue. Some of them created simulations of accidents, and the results were surprising. Using a seatbelt on a train could potentially increase the number of injuries. In cars, seatbelts are highly effective in protecting the passenger and are used all the time. The logic behind the seatbelt is to protect the person when a collision causes rapid deceleration. But trains carry so much momentum that they don't stop rapidly. On a plane, passengers use a seatbelt on takeoff, during landing, and if turbulence occurs. There are no such things for trains. Entering and leaving a station is not a high risk. Experts believe focusing and making investments are other ways to improve railway safety. Now, you are traveling by train. You look outside the window. There are small stones along the railway tracks to accompany you on the journey. Those stones are formally known as track ballast. They do a very important job. They provide support to and maintain the tracks. They're not there by mere coincidence, though. Now look at the stones closer. You can notice that there is no single smoothly cut stone on the tracks, because they're not regular stones randomly poured at the rails. Each rock has sharp and abrupt edges. Sharp edges hold on to each other. They protect the railroad from harsh concussions. They facilitate water drainage in heavy rain and keep down the grass and other weeds. Now imagine replacing those with round pebbles. They will slide down. Eventually, the ballast will spread out and tracks will fall apart. The last thing you would want, especially if you were a passenger on that train.
Imagine you're an art detective, and your task is to explore the mysteries behind the world's most famous paintings. I'm talking about works from Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Picasso. So, grab your magnifying glass, as this journey is about to begin. First off on your list is Rome. After enjoying delicious pasta, you head to the Sistine Chapel, home to the world's most famous ceiling. Oh, and you know how they say Michelangelo painted the frescoes lying down? This is just a myth. Actually, the painter created a complex system of platforms that allowed him to paint standing. You're checking out the creation of Adam, that fresco in the middle. The Italian artist Michelangelo, the author of this masterpiece, was widely known for his study of human anatomy. Art experts argue that the right part of the painting is an anatomically correct depiction of an enlarged brain. To proof-check this, you try overlapping a picture of the organ and the artwork. It seems to be a match. The cerebellum, the optic nerve, and the pituitary gland are all there. Even the floating green scarf thingy appears to match the vertebral artery. Some researchers think it was Michelangelo's way of depicting knowledge and wisdom. But you have to sleep on it to decide what you think. Moving on, you catch a train and arrive in Florence. Time for a quick gelato break. Then, straight to the Accademia Gallery. One of art's most celebrated sculptures is waiting for you inside. Michelangelo's David. David is a 17-foot tall marble wonder. It was carved for about 3 years. The mystery surrounding it is to figure out the statue's true expression. Looking at him from below, you'll think his face is serene and peaceful. But art historians argue that this work was largely misunderstood. Apparently, his body hides a very different story. Take a closer look, and you'll notice his brows are frowning, and the veins in his arms are popping out. That doesn't look too relaxed, does it? Michelangelo's idea was to depict David right before an important confrontation, so maybe he wasn't all that serene after all. Italy is so rich in art, you can't leave just yet. You're still in Florence. You pay a visit to the famous Uffizi Gallery. Many famous paintings are hosted by this museum, but you're checking out Botticelli's Primavera, or Spring. This artwork is mysterious from the get-go. Experts can't say the exact year it was commissioned. It remained untitled for years, until the painter Giorgio Vasari finally came up with a name for it. Usually, when critics and viewers admire this painting, they focus on the figures in the foreground. But in this case, the actual work lies in that Botticelli painted over 46 different plant species with almost identical precision. And, in the painting overall, these plant figures are repeated over 200 times. Unbelievable! I'd say the last visits were full of impressions, weren't they? Ready to keep going? A plane ride later, you arrive in Paris, the City of Lights, berets, and the famous Mona Lisa. You go through the Museum du Louvre and come to Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece, La Gioconda. There are many theories regarding this work of art, and you dive into some of them. A strong case has been made that the Mona Lisa could be a self-portrait of Da Vinci himself. Historians have thoroughly compared Da Vinci's face and that of the Mona Lisa. And guess what? They appear to be strikingly similar. And then there's the smirk theory. Dentist and art expert Joseph Bartowski claims to have discovered the secret behind Mona Lisa's smirk. He says her tight facial expression is a typical indication of someone who lost their front teeth. Could it be so? Also, in 2010, the Italian Committee for Cultural Heritage found a collection of symbols hidden in the painting. These are only visible through highly technological magnifying lenses, but they showed that Leonardo inscribed an LV inside Mona Lisa's right eye. Experts guess that this is Da Vinci's signature. But the other symbols, a CE in the left eye and a 72 in the arch of the background bridge, are still very mysterious. Phew! You covered a lot of ground on this one. Of course, at the end of your visit, remember to test if her eyes really follow you around. Now you're headed to Amsterdam to check out the Rijksmuseum. You came to see a specific Rembrandt painting that hides a mysterious story. The Night Watch is one of Rembrandt's most famous paintings, but experts argue that the name of the painting and its content are mismatched. Let's take a closer look. The painting depicts a large group ready to embark on a mission. Rembrandt's technique is called chiaroscuro, highlighting the contrast between light and shade. Until 1947, art critics believed the painter was depicting a nighttime scene. But when the painting was cleared of a thick dust layer, it became clear that the scene was happening in broad daylight, with the sun streaming down from the top left. Now, it's too late to change its name to the Day Watch. While in Amsterdam, you find a museum dedicated to Van Gogh's art. Did you know that he painted over 900 paintings during an impressive period of only 10 years? Anyway, the Van Gogh Museum hosts the biggest collection of yellow sunflower paintings you'll probably see in your life. Actually, almost all of Van Gogh's paintings feature dominant yellow shades. This particularity of his art may be a result of how he saw the world. Some art experts have speculated that one of Van Gogh's remedies changed his color perception, making him see more yellow around him. Okay, so this trip just keeps getting better. The next stop on your list is the United Kingdom. Then, on to the National Gallery. You may spend hours looking at Jan van Eyck's painting Arnolfini Portrait and not see anything out of the ordinary. In the foreground, a couple holds hands and stares at the viewer. But if you zoom in on the mirror on the wall, you'll see two more people in the room. Art experts say the male figure in the painting has his hands raised to greet these two people seen in the mirror, and that one of the figures is Van Eyck himself. And that's not the only watermark the painter left. Above the mirror, you'll see his flamboyant signature. Jan van Eyck was here, 1434. And speaking of people trying to sneak into their art, Caravaggio, the renowned Italian Renaissance painter, left a little Easter egg in one of his famous paintings, Bacchus. This one is a bit difficult to spot. In the half-filled jar in the bottom left corner of the painting, there is a tiny self-portrait of the painter himself, hidden amongst the liquid. To see the image clearly, one needs the help of sophisticated technology, or at least a very efficient magnifying lens. But it's there, a male figure, aka Caravaggio, with a brush in his hand. Fun fact, the tiny self-portrait was first noticed in 1922, over 300 years after the painting was completed. It was forgotten due to poor conservation. To finish the trip, you fly overseas across the Atlantic, all the way to Chicago. The enormous collection of the Art Institute hosts a well-known painting by Pablo Picasso, The Old Guitarist. This painting's secret is so well hidden that it also needs the help of X-ray machines and super fancy technology. But the results are worth it. The readings show that Picasso painted The Old Guitarist on top of another unfinished painting. We can clearly see the outlines and shapes of a half-drawn female figure that Picasso gave up on mid-work. The emerging artists of the time used that way of saving money quite often, as canvases were expensive. This was quite a tiring world trip, wasn't it? Get some rest, Sherlock of Art.
A comfortable abode with a gorgeous view of the Mediterranean Sea will serve as a perfect rain shelter. Well, this is what a real estate advertisement might have looked like for Neanderthals 100,000 years ago. Welcome to the weird and wonderful caves you could live in, or not. Of course, back then, neither real estate and advertising had been invented yet. Never mind the fact that Neanderthals couldn't build houses and often lived in caves. Yet, one of those caves looks an awful lot like a residential building. It's situated inside a high limestone cape called the Rock of Gibraltar. If the Neanderthals had had an economy, the caves inside this rock would have cost a bundle. Navigators discovered it in 1907. They just spotted a big hole inside the fortified rock. For many years, scientists have studied this place and found some traces of Neanderthals. They discovered ancient tools in the cave and bones of old animals. But the coolest thing was, they found 4 caves inside the rock. It was like a residential complex. Neanderthals lived alongside neighbors and helped each other hunt and fish. They created feather decorations and painted abstract drawings on the walls. Imagine our ancient predecessors hanging out in these caves 100,000 years ago. And now, scientists hang out there and study the primeval past of Neanderthals in detail. At the end of 2021, archaeologists uncovered a gap inside one of the caves leading to an unknown tunnel. They crawled through this hole and opened a new space under the cave roof. This place has been closed off from the outside world for over 40,000 years. And it seems it was one of the most prestigious apartments in the entire mountain complex. It has high ceilings with ancient stalactites. The ruined stone curtains divided the apartment into several rooms. Scientists also found the remains of ancient animals and scratches on the walls. It seems that Neanderthals had never lived here, but they used to visit this place. Archaeologists found the shell of a sea snail called dog whelk. One of the Neanderthals brought it here for some reason, but the primary owners of this place were hyenas. These caves show that Neanderthals were closer to humans than to monkeys. They had a way of life and even some customs. There's still a lot of work ahead, and scientists hope to find new rooms inside this rock. Meanwhile, in 2003, archaeologists discovered another early dwelling on the Isle of Flores in Indonesia. Among the green jungle, they found a cave with ancient tools. At first, everyone thought the human ancestors lived here, but then scientists discovered an unusual skeleton of an adult. A thorough analysis showed the skeleton belonged to a 30-year-old woman, 3.5 feet tall, just above the waist of an average adult. The woman's weight was equal to the weight of an adult shepherd. The skeleton didn't belong to Neanderthals or Australopithecines. It was a new unknown species, which scientists called Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. Also, there were remains of unusual ancient animals in the cave. It was an elephant the size of a cow, some large storks, and giant rats. Archaeologists have found out that hobbits were not the owners of this place. The main inhabitants were the rats the size of a cat. Maybe they were fighting the hobbits. Some analysis shows that Homo floresiensis wasn't our direct ancestor. They were in a separate branch of evolution. The hobbit skeleton looks more like that of a monkey than of modern humans. In 2009, in the dense jungle of Vietnam, archaeologists discovered Son Don, the largest cave in the world. If you go inside the cave and shout, you'll hear your echo a long time. In some places, the height of this cave reaches half the height of the Empire State Building, and the total area is larger than one central block of New York. Son Don is one of the 3 caves in the Vietnamese jungle. Many intricate mazes connect these caves. Inside, you can find unique plants and trees that live separately from the outside world. It's a real underground jungle. In some places, you can find collapsed ceilings that let the sunlight in. Besides unusual trees and plants, ancient stalactites hang there. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. They were here even before dinosaurs appeared. There are also many rivers in the cave. Rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling has formed them. Fast streams resemble slides in a water park. They lead to unknown underground labyrinths. Scientists have studied only a small part of all these caves. The next unusual cave is in New Zealand. Hundreds of thousands of fireflies live inside. Each of them glows with a blue light. Together, they light up the cave. It may seem to you that you're on another planet, but you can't stay there for a long time. Special air measuring devices are everywhere. Scientists monitor the level of carbon dioxide necessary for the normal existence of fireflies. These insects are sensitive to the environment. If there are many people in the cave, or they stay there too long, the park staff will ask them to leave the place. It's like you're literally stealing oxygen from the fireflies. We've seen some pretty amazing caves so far, but how about a scary one? We're going to the desert of Yemen's Al-Mara province. What we're looking for is not a cave, it's just a black hole in the ground, right in the middle of the desert. It's big, the size of a basketball court. It's not its size that could scare you, but what's inside. Scientists are still not sure what it is. From the depths of this black abyss, a disgusting smell of rotten eggs constantly comes out, and sometimes you can hear some strange, frightening sounds. The blackness of the giant hole in Yemen absorbs all the sun's rays, so you won't see what's there even with a powerful flashlight. People flew over this place by helicopter. They filmed using drones and the most powerful lenses, but they didn't catch anything except darkness. It looks like a big ink spot in the middle of golden sand. The locals are afraid to approach this place. They believe the cave leads to another dimension where evil creatures live. At the moment, the giant hole in Yemen is one of the most poorly studied and mysterious phenomenon of nature. How did it appear? How old is it? Where does it lead? Scientists are trying to find the answers to these questions. There are theories that the hole appeared because of construction work. Geologists drilled the soil nearby in search of minerals. It could have caused fluctuations in the Earth's crust and collapsed the surface. But no one can prove this theory, yet. And now, imagine a place where sunlight has not penetrated for more than 5 million years. There's little oxygen, and it's cold and damp. Still, life is born in this place, not only microbes and bacteria, but also something bigger. The living conditions in this cave are very different from the usual ones, so, in a sense, this cave is like another planet. It's the Movil Cave in the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. The entrance is a small hole in the ground. Inside, a tunnel leads deep below the surface. The levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide are above normal inside the cave. The air here is half as much oxygen as on the surface. People can't be here without an oxygen mask, but other creatures living here can. The cave is home to 48 species of living organisms. 33 of them are unknown. Here you can meet some unusual insects, white snails and white spiders, millipedes with huge whiskers, transparent shrimp, and unique species of leeches. They all live here thanks to the little bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and release food particles. Bacteria feed on it. Other larger organisms feed on these bacteria, and some bigger organisms eat those little ones. In the end, everyone gets food. In this cave, evolution has created a biological system separate from the rest of the world.
So get this, an extra hole at the upper part of the sink has multiple hidden functions. First, in case someone forgets to close the tap, the water won't overflow and the bathroom won't get flooded. Second, thanks to that hole, the water drains faster and it gives an escape for the air, helping the water flow down.
Those two holes on a side of any Converse shoe are not only to let the stinky air out. Sure, breathability is important for any athlete. The second reason is that athletes lace through those holes to get a better grip. Donuts have a hole in the middle and it doesn't stand for O in donut. It's not designed for an easier grip either, though it can be quite convenient. It's actually made this way for mass baking so that they can cook all the way through evenly. Baby carrots are tiny and, unlike regular carrots, wet. Baby carrots aren't some special sort of carrots. They're actually made of regular carrots by cutting off the skin and outer layers and then polishing them to look that pretty. The problem is that they can't retain moisture. A regular carrot retains some water inside because of the layers that locks it in. Once they're chopped out, baby carrots can dry out easily, so they usually sell them in bags with some water inside. Toy stores are filled with Beanie Baby plush toys, and a detail that is even more iconic than their huge eyes is their tags saying TY. That's a small manufacturing company not so many people have heard of. Beanie Babies appeared in 1993 and they went insanely popular. TY is the name of the company, but it's not an abbreviation. It's the actual name of the company's founder, H. Ty Warner. Most metallic zippers have a hidden lock inside them to save you from awkward situations, such as an undone fly. Oh boy. Don't leave the zipper handle in an upward position. When you pull it downwards, it automatically locks. It's all thanks to those tiny grooves hidden underneath the handle. Almost any public toilet has a large gap between the floor and the door. The reason for such a zero privacy thing is to actually minimize the level of privacy and comfort, so that people wouldn't stay there long and there'd be no lines. It's also easier to clean, and safer if some emergency occurs. Headrests in a car are about comfort, and detachable headrests are about safety. If you pull the headrest out of a seat, you'll see two bars, which are quite sturdy. If you ever get locked or trapped in a car, you can get out of there smashing the window with these bars. Many cups and mugs have little grooves on the bottom on purpose. They're designed for dishwashing machines. The grooves let the water flow and not spill over your feet when you take the cup out. Also, those grooves let the air flow, so the cup doesn't crack even if the tea is scalding. Almost all measuring tapes have a metal tip with a small slot on the end. You can use this slot to hang the tape on a nail or a screw to make measurements without anyone's help. Sometimes this tip has a row of sharp points along the edge on one side. That comes in handy when you want to leave a mark without using a pencil. Doorknobs are usually made of brass, bronze, and some other copper alloys for a reason. They have an antibacterial effect, so they stop microbes from spreading. They get rid of a range of harmful germs pretty fast, within a couple of hours. But don't forget to wash your hands anyway. Grocery carts have loops for a reason. You don't want to put your jacket in a cart next to potatoes and onions. Hang it on a loop. This little hook-like thing is there to help you better organize the space in your cart. The carts also have a super handy grid. Whenever the cart's full, you just need to lift the grid and attach the shopping basket for extra purchases, placing it in between the horizontal bar above the wheels and the hooks the grid has. A point in an ointment cap is there for a reason too. Most tubes are usually sealed with foil, and it's better to avoid opening it with fingers unless you're ready to say goodbye to your nails. A point easily opens even the most safely sealed tube. Silica gel can often be found in different things you buy like bags, shoes, and many others. Don't throw it away. It's meant to absorb excess moisture, so anytime your shoes are a bit wet, just throw in a packet with silica gel. People used to co-live with rats, and these guys like gnawing on everything they see in their way, including paper. Still, rats weren't able to chew more than the space left on the margins. That black grate on a microwave isn't just some fancy decoration. It's called a Faraday shield, and it prevents the rays from escaping the microwave. It also speeds up the heating, so you can enjoy yesterday's leftovers faster. It may also block phone signals, so if you're tired of numerous calls, just put the phone into a microwave, but don't turn it on. All Tic Tac containers are designed to dispense one Tic Tac every time you open it. the lid has the same shape as the candy. Turn the container upside down, gently shake it, and open it slowly. You'll notice only one candy stuck between those lid grooves. So if you just open the container and shake it until 5 or even more candies fall into your mouth, it means you've been eating Tic Tacs wrong all this time. Those little holes in the airplane windows are designed to control the cabin pressure. They also protect the windows from fogging up as the temperatures drop and rise. By the way, the airplane window is round for a reason. This way, pressure is evenly distributed so it doesn't get deformed. Blue bristles on a toothbrush are actually an indicator that it's just about time to change the brush. As the bristles get in contact with water, the blue, or whatever other, pigment fades away, so the more you use it, the duller the color becomes. A triple handle on a jerry can is there to make it easier for 2 people to carry it and distribute the fuel evenly. Gas cans often have a second hole that actually needs to be uncapped too before you pour the gas. The air passage will prevent it from pouring out, so no more fuel waste. Jeans first appeared in 1873. They were invented by Jacob Davis and Levi Strauss. Davis was a tailor who was producing covers and tents, and Strauss was a businessman who, among other things, was selling cloth. The first jeans were made by Davis from denim, the fabric he bought from Levi Strauss & Co. Together, they patented the design. Blue was a standard color for denim that was dyed using an indigo dye. The blue color is a tradition that is still often followed today to replicate the original look of a pair of jeans. Jeans also have metal rivets, and they've been there from the very beginning. Jacob Davis, the man who made the first pair of jeans, added copper rivets to spots where pants were more likely to rip, flies, and pockets to make them stronger. Today, they have more of a decorative purpose since they're distinctive and traditional for jeans. Another special thing about jeans is those tiny pockets they have that seemingly serve no purpose. Well, maybe it's true now, but years ago, when many cowboys were wearing jeans, the pocket was made specifically to keep a pocket watch there. Also, back then, a pair of jeans had just 4 pockets. That tiny pocket, the watch pocket, 2 big pockets in front, and just 1 pocket on the back. Many zippers have the letters YKK engraved on them. It's an abbreviation that stands for the name of the company that can be translated as Yoshida Manufacturing Shareholding Company. This Japanese company is the largest zipper manufacturer in the world, so they put their initials on all the zippers they produce. That's around half of the zippers in the world. And that's why you see their zippers more often than any other zippers. Those little white golf balls have dimples all over them. It turns out they aren't there just randomly. At first, golfers were playing with a smooth ball. With time, the ball would get all punched and damaged, but also it would start to travel way further. The reason here is aerodynamics. Dimples allow the air to flow more smoothly around the ball, taking it further. So the idea was adopted and the balls got their dimples all around, allowing them to travel longer distances.
Most kitchen shears have metal plier-like teeth in the middle, between the handle grips. They can help you crack nuts, grab shells, and release other tough products. You can also open jars and bottles, or remove herb stems with their help. You can keep your cold meals cold and your food fresh by making a DIY ice pack. Take a sponge and fill it with water. Then put it in a plastic bag and leave it in the freezer. Once the sponge is frozen, it'll stay this way for a long time. Keep in mind that you should use a watertight bag and a fresh sponge. If you turn over a Tupperware container, you'll see some symbols. They'll inform you if you can put the container in the dishwasher, if it can be microwaved or frozen. You may even find out how you can recycle the thing. Staplers actually have 2 modes, not just one. There's a metal plate on the lower part of the device, which helps bend the staples inward after they've pierced the paper. What many people don't know is that you can turn this plate around to switch from the staple mode to the pinning one. The pinning setting is for temporary fastening. The staples bend outward, making them easier to remove when necessary and damaging the paper less too. When you take a sip from a coffee cup closed with a lid, the air pressure inside the cup drops. That's why the air from the outside tries to push into the cup. The tiny hole on the lid allows some air to enter this way, and the liquid can go out of the main hole more smoothly. It's often hard to figure out how much detergent you need to clean your laundry well, but not go overboard. Pay attention to the cap of your detergent. It usually has a marker indicating how much product you need to add to your laundry. Or there might be an instruction on the bottle. It'll let you know how to measure the detergent. You can use most screwdrivers together with a wrench to create more torque. Just place the wrench over the handle of the screwdriver. This way, you'll need to apply a lot less force than before. You'll also be able to get to hard-to-reach areas more easily. The hole in a ruler can be useful if you want to hang the device on a hook. You can also place a pencil tip in this hole if you need to draw a perfect circle. Coffee stirring sticks have holes in them because those help reduce the resistance from your drink. This way, they can stir sugar much more effectively. Such a design also makes these plastic sticks tougher and prevents them from bending in hot water. And since stirring sticks are partially hollow, less plastic is used during their production. Some boxes of chocolates have little dents in between the holes for candies. If you push such a dent, the chocolates surrounding it will pop out of their compartments. The small bumps on the F and J keys on the keyboard help people find the right keys without looking down. It's especially convenient for those who use touch typing. The rumble strips on the sides of the road are placed there to alert drivers who doze off behind the wheel. When their tires move over these strips, the noise and vibration work like an alarm clock. The black grate on a microwave is called a Faraday shield. It contains the electromagnetic energy inside the oven and protects the exterior from radiation. The grate also speeds up the heating process. Bottles have long necks so that your drink stays cool longer. Hold the neck, not the bottle itself, and your drink won't warm up. Dimples on the surface of a golf ball increase its lift and reduce air resistance. It means that the ball can go further. The dimples don't have to be spherical. They can be hexagonal or have any other shape. There's a tab on the bottom of your rearview mirror. If you push it back during nighttime driving, the headlights of the car moving behind yours won't be so blinding. If you're driving during the day, pull the tab forward. You can peel an orange more effectively if you cut into the peel at the top and bottom first. Then make a slit on one side and just pull the peel open. Headrests in cars are detachable. You can use one to break the windows if you get stuck in your vehicle. But by smashing the glass, you can easily hurt yourself. So try sliding one of the prongs in between the window pane and the door. Then pull the headrest towards yourself. The window will shatter. But hey, I'd try the door lock first. Solo cups used at barbecue parties can help you measure liquids. The bottom line equals 1 ounce. The second line means you poured 5 ounces. And the third line means 12 ounces. Sneakers were originally invented for basketball players. And since they needed to lace their shoes in the most comfortable way, side holes were invented. Those helped players lace their sneakers in any way they liked, and they accommodate anyone's foot. Little buttons on your jeans are called rivets. They were originally placed there to prevent the seams from ripping. In the past, mostly miners and other workers wore jeans. That's why this item of clothing had to be particularly durable. And even though these days jeans aren't under such stress, the tradition of using rivets still remains. A big toothy spoon comes in handy when you need to pull your spaghetti out of the pot. And the hole in the middle of this spoon can help you measure portions. 1 portion equals as many dry noodles as you can fit into the hole. Sometimes, pre-rinsing dishes may lead to your dishwasher cleaning them worse than it could. Special sensors inside modern dishwashers can perceive how dirty your plates are. And after that, they send a controlled jet of water to wash all that stuff off. The only thing you're actually supposed to do is remove solid food from your plates and stack them up properly. Ribbed ketchup containers that they give you at fast food restaurants can get a bit bigger. Just pull the ribs outward, and your container will house much more sauce. While using a plunger on a clogged kitchen sink or toilet, make sure you've got the right tool. If it has a standard bowl-shaped rubber head, it's perfect for flat surfaces, such as a sink or a tub. But the one designed for toilet pipes has a narrower head. The hole near the rim of your bathroom sink is there to prevent overflows. Thanks to it, all excess water goes into the siphon. Plus, it helps your sink drain faster. The hole gives the air gathered in the siphon somewhere to escape. The hole in a lollipop stick can save your life. If the stick gets stuck in someone's mouth, the hole will prevent this person from choking. But the original reason for it is to simply not let the candy run off the stick. During production, the liquid treat is poured on top of the stick. The stick is hollow inside, so the candy gets inside it from both the top and the side, through that exact hole. And when it gets solid, it keeps perfectly on the plastic tube. Most padlocks have a tiny hole on the bottom. It's needed to drain water from the lock and avoid corrosion. By the way, it's the best place to lubricate a padlock. Just put a drop of oil there, and the key will turn much easier. If you don't see a hole on the bottom, the lock is supposed to be used inside. Instead of opening a banana at the stem, turn it upside down and peel it from the bottom. It opens much more easily this way. A utility knife can serve you much longer than you might think. Look at the blade carefully. It's made of parallel sections. Once the knife gets blunt, you should break off the top section. You can do it with the help of the cap you'll find at the bottom of the instrument. In no time, you'll have a sharp blade again. The stripes on headphone jacks keep the wires insulated from one another. One stripe means the headset has a mono signal. 2 stripes indicate you'll have stereo sound. And 3 stripes means the headset also has a built-in microphone. You can usually find some silica gel in bags, shoes, and many other things you buy. This gel absorbs excess moisture. Don't throw it away. Every time your shoes get wet, put some packets of silica gel inside them. It's very convenient to use bread tags to organize your cords. Just take a bread tag and several cords and clip them together. You can also write notes on these tags and use them as reminders.
The majority of us have believed for a really long time that Stonehenge, one of the most iconic monuments in the world, was an ancient calendar because of its alignment with the summer and winter solstices. But no one could figure out how it really worked. Now, a team of researchers have come out with another study. It turns out that Stonehenge could have functioned like the solar calendar. It's a similar principle to the solar calendar ancient Egyptians used to have, the one based on a year composed of 365.25 days. Each of the stones from this big mysterious sarsen circle represented one day within a month. Sarsens are what we call these large boulders. It's actually a perpetual calendar, where people could track every winter solstice sunset. That way, those who lived near Stonehenge, which is today Wiltshire, UK, could keep track of the days and months of the year. We all now understand this mysterious calendar system because of this interesting discovery in 2020. The team has identified the source of 50 of the 52 sarsens that make up the iconic stone circle we all know about. They analyzed the chemical composition of these sarsens and traced their origins to the West Woods in Wiltshire, which is about 15 miles away from the monument. Not only did these 50 sarsens come from the same source, but they were also placed in their current position at approximately the same time. They make the outer circle of Stonehenge, together with a horseshoe-shaped inner ring. Near the center of the monument, there are smaller rocks, known as bluestones. The team traced the origins of the bluestones all the way to Wales. They also discovered that the sarsens share a common chemistry, over 99% silica with trace elements. 2 sarsens were different from each other and also different from the main cluster. These sarsens were arranged in 3 different formations at Stonehenge. 30 of them formed this huge stone circle that dominates the monument. 4 station stones ended up in a rectangular formation outside the circle, while the rest, located inside the stone circle, were constructed into 5 trilithons. A trilithon is when you have two vertical stones with a horizontal lintel at the top. 30, 5, and 4 are pretty interesting numbers in the context of this calendar system. The 30 uprights that are spread around the main Sarsen ring could represent days of the month. If you multiply that by 12, you get 360. Add on 5 more, those from the central trilithons, and the result is 365. And to really adjust the calendar to match a solar year, you need to add 1 extra leap day for every 4 years, right? The team believes the ancient people used the 4 station stones to keep track of this part. So, in this system, they paired the summer and winter solstice every year with the same pair of stones. Ancient people started building Stonehenge about 5,000 years ago, and it took more than 1,000 years to finish the work. But the Stonehenge you see today is not the complete, original version from the beginning. People have broken and taken away many of its old bluestones and sarsens. The entire structure also changed over time since there were generations and generations, 180 of them to be precise, that passed since the beginning of Stonehenge, who would participate in the building and rebuilding of it. People created Stonehenge in 4 stages. They first built a circular enclosure that stretched over 330 feet, 100 meters, in diameter and went around 56 pits. A high bank flanks the ditch of the enclosure, while there's a low bank on the outside. Some theories even say that this part was some form of a communal cemetery. Later, in the second stage, builders added a horseshoe of Sarsen trilithons. In the third stage, they constructed a ceremonial avenue that was nearly 2 miles long. It possibly traced the path of the bluestones. People moved from the Aubrey holes to the Q and R holes, a double arc that these bluestones have been arranged into. At this stage, builders also reorganized the entrance stones and recut the main enclosure ditch. During the fourth stage, the stones were broken and builders etched carvings into the sarsens. Later, the bluestones ended up being modified again. Builders didn't leave any written records about how they managed to drag these heavy stones to the site and get them to stand so perfectly upright. But there are theories that say their techniques were more closely associated with woodwork than masonry. They made mortise holes and protruding tenons because they wanted to slot these stones together, and they used tongue and groove joints to do that. When they dug the hole for the stones, they placed timber poles at the back of the holes that were used as brace support. Then, they moved the stone into a position and hauled it upward with ropes. They packed rubble into the hole to make sure the stone stayed in place. A pre-industrial farming society put this fascinating monument together using only tools made of stone and bone. Not even the wheel had been invented yet. This unusual formation is also known as ringing rocks. The stones you can see at Stonehenge have some pretty odd acoustic properties. When you strike them, they produce a loud clanging sound. That could be one of the reasons why people bothered to transport them over such a long distance in the first place. In some ancient cultures, people believed that these rocks contained healing powers. It's a really popular location that attracts over 1 million visitors a year. When it first opened to the public, visitors were allowed to walk among the stones. They could even climb on them, as there weren't any restrictions. Until the 19th century, visitors would regularly chip off pieces of the rock to take them home as souvenirs. They would also engrave their initials into the stones. They camped within the circle and dug fire pits, not realizing that the digging pits could seriously undermine the stability of the entire monument. Over time, visitors have encountered more and more restrictions until the monument was finally roped off in 1997 because of the serious erosion of the stones. That means if you want to visit, you can only view it from a distance, unless you want to pay extra for the stone circle experience, which can be arranged outside of normal visiting hours. Stonehenge originally had 2 entrances that led into the enclosure. There was a wide one to the northeast and one that was a bit smaller and located on the southern side. If you look at it today, you can see there are many more gaps. This is mostly because of tracks made later that once crossed the monument. The ground within Stonehenge has been severely disturbed, and it wasn't just about random visitors digging fire pits. There was a group of people who dug a large deep hole within the stone circle in the 17th century because they were looking for treasure. Then there was Charles Darwin, who also did some digging because he was studying earthworms in the area. He wanted to know how these worms could impact objects in the soil over time. He observed how a fallen stone there had sunk deeper into the ground and realized it was happening because of the activities of these tiny creatures who churned through the soil all the time. In 1963, there was a theory that Stonehenge had been built as some sort of computer that predicts solar and lunar eclipses. Later, some proposed it was actually constructed as a monument to ancestors that had passed away. This theory says the permanence of its stones represented the eternal afterlife. The average sarsen you can find there weighs 25 tons, while the biggest one weighs around 30 tons. If you want to get an idea of how massive these stones really are, you can go behind the visitor center in the outdoor gallery to check out a replica sarsen stone. It's a true copy of a freestanding upright from one of the trilithons that are located in the inner horseshoe of the monument. There are 5 Neolithic houses at Stonehenge based on real archaeological evidence of houses found in that area. Each of them had stake-built walls and a chalk floor. Some even had furniture. There was also a lot of trash discovered, which means people in this area used to like celebrations and feasting. Research has shown that people lived in these houses for 50 to 100 years, around 4,500 years BCE, which was the time when the builders brought the sarsen stones to Stonehenge. During the time they were building Stonehenge, generations of people went through major changes themselves, from the Stone Age to the early Bronze Age. They were no longer as static and isolated. They started to travel and trade more, which means they communicated way more than their ancestors, even internationally. This is how they could have spread the word about Stonehenge. And it's also when the whole mystery and fascination with the monument began.
Now, when you think about it, most bottles have one thing in common: long necks. Ever wondered why? Well, there are several reasons, none of which involve those other long necks, giraffes and ostriches. For starters, have you ever poured something into a glass from a wide jar? It can be real hard since water often sticks to a wide surface and then spills around. The reason it happens is physics. Air and liquid tend to flow along a surface. This phenomenon is called the Coanda effect. It's hard to pour liquid because of this effect. The liquid molecules are drawn to the jar's surface. Another reason is surface tension, which means that the molecules of a liquid tend to stick to one another rather than to the air. So, the water stays together and flows together down the surface instead of going where you want it to go. A narrow neck makes it easier to pour and drink from the bottle since there's a smaller surface for the liquid to spread around. Another reason is practical. A smaller neck requires less material to make it and a smaller cap to close it. This way, they can reduce the cost of the bottle. And one more reason: the necks prevent you from warming up the drink. If there's no neck, you'll most likely hold the bottle in the middle, right where the liquid is. The warmth from your hands will be rapidly warming up the drink inside. If there's a neck, you'll hold the bottle by the neck. It'll minimize the amount of heat transferred to the bottle, and your drink will stay cold longer. If you use reusable bottles, you probably know that sometimes they smell. Even if you only use it for regular water, it still smells. But it's not the water that smells, it's the microorganisms in it. If you drink water from a bottle, the particles of your saliva and sweat stay in there. Those bacteria start to build up in the bottle, causing the smell. So, if you choose reusable bottles, make sure to wash them every day to prevent those bacteria from building up. After washing, let it dry completely before using it again. Some people reuse plastic bottles, but it's not always safe because most of them are intended for single use. The main concern here is chemical leaching. The chemicals that are used to produce a plastic bottle can mix with the liquid. If you reuse a plastic bottle, wear and tear can create tiny, unnoticeable scratches inside the bottle where more bacteria can grow. So, if you need a bottle to use for a while, invest in one that is made to be reused. But don't forget to wash it every day. Now, jeans first appeared in 1873. They were invented by Jacob Davis and Levi Strauss. Davis was a tailor who was producing covers and tents. and Strauss was a businessman who, among other things, was selling cloth. The first jeans were made by Davis from denim, the fabric he bought from Levi Strauss & Company. Together, they patented the design. Blue was a standard color for denim that was dyed using an indigo dye. The blue color is a tradition that's still often followed today to replicate the original look of a pair of jeans. Jeans also have metal rivets, and they are there from the very beginning. Jacob Davis, the man who made the first pair of jeans, added copper rivets to spots where pants are more likely to rip, flies and pockets, to make them stronger. Today, they have more of a decorative purpose since they are distinctive and traditional for jeans. Another special thing about jeans is those tiny pockets they have that seemingly serve no purpose. Well, maybe it's true now, but years ago, when many cowboys were wearing jeans, the pocket was made specifically to keep a pocket watch there. Also, back then, a pair of jeans had just 4 pockets: that tiny pocket, the watch pocket, 2 big pockets in front, and just 1 pocket on the back. Many zippers have the letters YKK engraved on them. It's an abbreviation that stands for the name of the company that can be translated as Yoshida Manufacturing Shareholding Company. This Japanese company is the largest zipper manufacturer in the world, so they put their initials on all the zippers they produce. That's around half of all the zippers in the world, and that's why you see their zippers more often than any other zippers. Now, zipping along, not only are the jeans blue, but the police officers' uniforms as well. The first official police officers appeared in the 19th century in London. They were given a blue uniform to contrast with the red and white uniform that military workers had already been wearing. 2 decades afterward, the police force was adopted in the USA, and they followed the patterns. The uniform is still blue nowadays because it proved to be a good color. It's not that visible in dark hours, and police officers can observe things and people staying unnoticed. Also, stains aren't that visible on dark material. And, well, everyone knows that police officers wear blue and they're recognized by it. So, why change that? Those little white golf balls have dimples all over them. It turns out they aren't there just randomly. At first, golfers were playing with a smooth ball. With time, the ball would get all punched and damaged, but also, it would start to travel way further. The reason here is aerodynamics. Dimples allow the air to flow more smoothly around the ball, taking it further. So the idea was adopted, and the balls got their dimples all around, allowing them to travel longer distances. Now sometimes, when birds go somewhere far away across the ocean, they can spend days flying. Now I've always wondered how they sleep on the way. Turns out there are several ways. Some birds are always just half asleep. Half of their brain is working and the other half is sleeping, just like mine. Then they switch and the other half sleeps. Other birds just take short naps throughout the day. And when I say short, I mean it. On average, a nap lasts around 9 seconds, and during that time, the bird is just coasting. Throughout the day, those naps add up, and a bird gets its sleeping time. Horseshoes are real shoes for horses. People attach them to their pets' hooves. They do it to protect the hooves in particularly tough and damaging environments, like tough pavements made of unnatural materials that horses aren't naturally adapted to. Horseshoes have their bizarre shape because they're nailed to the hoof. The center of a horse's hoof is sensitive, and they would feel the pain if someone tried to attach the horseshoe in the middle. But the sides of the hooves don't feel any pain, and for this reason, horseshoes are round and have an empty center, kinda like attaching fake fashion fingernails. Reading sometimes makes you doze off, and people who have trouble sleeping often take advantage of this and read in the evening to fall asleep. But if you don't want to fall asleep, why does it still happen? Well, usually, you read in a quiet and relaxing atmosphere, and also in bed or in a comfortable armchair wrapped up in blankets. This isn't only a perfect atmosphere for a read, but for falling asleep as well. Your mind stops wondering about all the troubles you had during the day, focusing on one thing. So it goes to the right mood, ideal for falling asleep, and so it does. Most shampoos say that you should wash your hair twice. But is it true, or is it just their way to make you use more of the product and buy it more often? Well, it depends on how often you wash your hair. Typically, the first wash removes all the dirt and dead cells, and the second wash moisturizes your hair and scalp. So yes, 2 times is a good thing to do, but only if you wash your hair once in several days. If you wash it every day or every other day, there's not that much dirt accumulated there, and 1 wash is enough for you. Baby carrots are tiny and, unlike regular carrots, wet. Baby carrots aren't some special sort of carrots. They're actually made of regular carrots by cutting off the skin and outer layers and then polishing them to look that pretty. The problem is they can't retain moisture. A regular carrot retains some water inside because of the layers that lock it in. Once they're chopped out, baby carrots can dry out easily, so they usually sell them in bags with some water inside. Toy stores are filled with Beanie Babies plush toys, and a detail that is even more iconic than their huge eyes is their tag saying Thai. That's a small manufacturing company not many people have heard of. Beanie Babies appeared in 1993, and they went insanely popular. Thai is the name of the company, but it's not an abbreviation. It's the actual name of the company's founder, H. Thai Warner.
You've probably noticed that train and bus seats are covered in fabrics with weird patterns. Have any idea why? Well, they use these patterns to cover any germs and stains on the seats. The brighter the color and the more patterned it is, the harder it will be for passengers to notice any stains and get grossed out. Also, the patterns are usually so ugly that no one even wants to look at them for long enough to spot any stains. So yeah, the pattern is there to make you look away. And if you look, to make it less noticeable. No bus will ever have plain white seats, that's a guarantee. Just a few more bus-related questions to answer. Like, why don't buses have seatbelts? Buses are overall way safer than cars because they were designed this way. The idea behind this is called compartmentalization, meaning that the seats have high backs that absorb energy. The seats are also placed close to one another, so there's less space to move in case of an impact. Also, on a bus, the passengers sit pretty high off the ground, and in case of a collision, the force is absorbed by the bus's deck and not by the people inside. On top of that, a bus is way heavier than most other vehicles, and even if there is a collision, it distributes the force way differently than a regular car. Due to its weight, a lot of force is absorbed, and bus passengers don't experience much crush force. So, small and light buses that can't distribute the force as well actually do require seatbelts. And we have to remember that buses drive slowly, which minimizes the risk of an accident overall. We all know that school buses are yellow, but why? It's for visibility reasons. Yellow is one of the most easily recognized colors, and for a human eye, yellow is even more visible than, say, red. So, school buses are yellow to make them more distinctive. Also, yellow is visible in the dark, in fog, and on a rainy day. Actually, the color of the bus isn't really a true yellow. It also has a hint of orange. This shade even has an official name, National School Bus Glossy Yellow. By the way, taxi cabs are yellow for the same reason, to be more visible in any weather conditions. Also, buses have huge steering wheels, and I finally learned why. Buses are bigger than regular cars, and they're also way heavier, so it's harder to turn a bus around, and way more strength is required to do so than when you drive a car. A bigger steering wheel that has a bigger radius allows the driver to turn the vehicle more easily, and it requires less force than if the wheel were smaller. Trucks have big steering wheels for the same reason. But have you seen those stuffed toys that some trucks have attached in front of them? Turns out, it's just a way for truck drivers to customize their vehicles. It's like a mascot that speaks about the truck or the driver. It's also a way to communicate to the world that the truck driver isn't all scary and tough, but a soft and harmless person that you shouldn't be afraid of. At least, that's how some truck drivers explain it. In Asia, there's also a belief that road accidents are caused by ghosts, and hanging toys are a way to distract the ghosts from causing harm to the truck. Ever been on a road trip? If you're not the driver, all you have to do is just sit in one place and do basically nothing for hours. Doesn't sound like a hard task, but some people find it terribly exhausting. And because of this, they resent road trips. Why do they get so tired? Well, sitting in a car isn't like sitting in a chair. The brain doesn't relax. Instead, it controls everything that's going on, accounting for movements and making sure that you maintain the right posture. Your brain is constantly working, exchanging bits of information with your muscles, so your body is working. Some people get tired because of this. If you aren't doing much, it doesn't mean that your body isn't doing much. Train rides are way more tolerable because trains don't stop or change speeds as often as cars do, so the body is more relaxed, and train trips are way more tolerable for people who aren't fans of road trips. Another mystery is why it's way harder to stand still in the same spot for 30 minutes in comparison to, for example, walking for 30 minutes. Again, it sounds like you're not doing anything when you're standing, so why is it so tiring? Well, standing is a pretty hard task for your body. When standing, the muscles in your legs work very hard to support the mass of your whole body. If you're standing, there are not many muscles working, and only a few of them have to do all the work. When walking, there are more muscles working at the same time, so it's easier. Also, when standing, both of your legs are working without stopping. But when walking, each of them gets a tiny break each time you step using the other leg. Why is it that the same book can have different covers? There are several reasons for this. First, the cover may vary because of the target audience. An edition of a book that is being marketed to older people is usually different from the edition aimed at younger people, with the one for younger people usually being brighter and cuter. The cover can also depend on the country the book is being sold in, trying to attract as many buyers as possible based on the tastes of the population. Next, books vary from edition to edition. At first, a book is printed in hardcover in small quantities to see how it'll do on the market. If the book is a relative success, there is another edition printed, often in trade paperback. The design of the cover is usually updated with every edition. Also, if a book has a movie based on it, there is usually another edition that follows. This edition will take advantage of the movie and use a movie scene as the cover, making it recognizable for people who saw and liked the movie, and encouraging them to buy a copy of the book. Most books are printed on yellowish paper, and few have plain white pages. But why is that? Unless it's a mass-market paperback edition with paper that's the same quality as a newspaper, meaning bad. It's done with good quality paper. Don't let the yellow hue confuse you. It's usually called cream, and it's a preference for any book because it's less tiring on the reader's eyes. The plain white paper is bleached, and it reflects a lot of light, so it can be exhausting to read for a long time. So, that yellowish paper is the best paper, and publishers regularly use it. Another thing about books is those blank pages they often have at the very end. Their number depends on the number of pages in the book. The thing is that books are printed in signature. A signature is a group of pages that printers fold together and cut to make a book. A signature can have a different number of book pages, with the minimum being 4, and then with other numbers divisible by 4. So, a book that is 300 pages long in total will fit in perfectly, and there will be no blank pages left. But if a book needs 303 pages, it'll need an additional signature, and the extra pages will remain blank, often marked with the word notes or with the message, "This page is intentionally left blank," to let the reader know that there's no important information missing. Ever wondered why most doctors have sloppy handwriting? No, there's no class in medical colleges on bad handwriting. The reason why it's so common is that doctors are always in a rush, and they write as fast as possible to keep their momentum, so there's no time to care about writing nicely. Also, keep in mind that you're not the only person who they write a prescription for over the course of a day. Doctors do a lot of paperwork, working for 10 hours straight, and they're just too tired most of the time to give you a properly written note. Have you noticed that most songs, in general, last somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes? Well, originally, songs were being played on a phonograph record player from a vinyl record, which was spinning at 78 revolutions per minute. So, the size of the vinyl record basically determined the length of the song. There were 2 basic record sizes, a 10-inch one, which had room for about 3 minutes of playtime, and a 12-inch, which could fit a 4-minute song. So, at the beginning of the 20th century, if an artist wanted their song played, they couldn't make it longer than that if they wanted to be able to sell a record. Times have changed, but still, most songs are about 3 to 4 minutes long. The initial reason for sticking to this pattern was also because of radio. If a song was too long, it would either get cut in half or some parts would be left off to make it fit into the 3 to 5 minute radio standard. If an artist wanted the song on the radio, and if they wanted to earn money from it, they'd do their best to make a song that fits the standard, so that the whole piece could be played without alterations. Today, even if there are longer songs, a 3 to 4 minute song is now a tradition that artists typically stick to.
Think you're ready to see the world in a whole new way? I hope so, because I'm about to blow your mind. Have you ever noticed those plastic lines along the side of your phone? They're the oddly spaced stripes that seem to have no purpose. In reality, though, they're probably your phone's most important feature, because without them, your device would be little more than a smart paperweight. They are antenna lines, allowing your phone to remain wireless. Electromagnetic waves carrying phone, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi signals cannot pass through metal, which makes up most of the phone's outer case. And the glass panel up front also slows those waves down. It's like there's a bouncer at the door, refusing to let most signals in or out of the phone. Hey, I've been to that nightclub. Anyway, that means no phone calls, no text, and no late-night delivery when you have nothing in the fridge except one egg and something that might have once been lasagna. Those little strips of plastic allow the same electromagnetic waves to come and go as they please. This is why you can call a friend, order a ride, or play an online matching game until 3 in the morning. Hey, don't you have to get up early for work? When you do finally stumble out of bed, make sure you're using this next item correctly to avoid a potentially upsetting situation. The zipper, originally patented as the clasp locker in 1851, didn't become widely used until the 1930s. Now they're on everything, from bags to jackets to jeans. And they're not perfect. They get stuck. They pinch the skin. And we all know what happens if the zipper on our pants refuses to stay up. Well, luckily, this can be avoided. Most zippers have a locking mechanism built right in. When the zip is facing down and flat against the teeth, the lock is engaged and the zipper remains closed. If only I had known that back in school. What about those metal rivets most jeans have? They're more than a design choice. They were added to protect areas that experience the most strain, such as pocket corners and the base of the fly. The rivets hold the fabric together, even when it's being stretched and pulled during work. And since we're talking about clothing, have you ever wondered about that tiny fifth pocket at the front of your jeans? Well, first of all, it isn't really a fifth pocket. Originally, jeans were made with 4 pockets, including that little one in front. The fifth pocket is actually the one on the back left, which was only added to jeans in 1901. The little pocket, though, was important a long time ago. Cowboys needed to keep their pocket watches safe while riding out on the range. Yee-haw! That pocket kept the watches protected but also handy. And then people became so used to it that jeans just look weird without one. Another strange holdout from a bygone day is that stitched V on the front of some sweatshirts. What if I told you that those exact stitches hold the whole shirt together? Well, then I would be lying, and I never do that. But back in the 1940s, this V was very useful. First, the V stitch was initially used to add a patch of stretchy rib fabric to the shirt so that it could fit over our big heads more easily. Secondly, these shirts were specifically designed for sports, so the V included an additional piece of fabric to absorb the sweat that would build up during a game or a workout. As stretchy fabric became readily available and better at handling perspiration, the V lost its traditional value. But, like the tiny jean pocket, it has continued as a decorative feature, a reminder of our big-headed ancestors who apparently only sweated just below the chin. But moving on. One place you won't find many people sweating is the golf course. You will see quite a few fashion disasters, sure, but sweat? Not so much. Golf was invented around the 16th century in Scotland. Back then, the ball was perfectly round and smooth. Over time, the ball would become dented from use, and at some point, golfers discovered that these imperfections actually helped the ball fly farther. Dimples were added on purpose in the 1900s, when it was found out that they reduced the aerodynamic drag that slowed down a smoother ball, and the dimples made the balls easier to control. And no, not all golf balls are created equal. The number of dimples can range from 300 to 500, with one company producing a ball with over 1,000 little dents. Wow, a little overboard, eh? Need a quick, refreshing drink after a round of golf? Juice boxes, created back in 1963, are very convenient. But why do they have these large triangular flaps on top? Their lifted flaps act as hand grips. This stops you from accidentally squeezing a full box and spilling juice all over the place, like onto your favorite t-shirt or the new couch. Now, when you're done golfing, grab your backpack with that leather diamond patch with 2 vertical openings. It's commonly referred to as a lash tab, but I much prefer its other name, pig snout. I mean, it certainly looks like one. You typically find these pig snouts on packs used by hikers and climbers. The diamond is a place to tie any extra gear that they need to carry, like boots, cooking equipment, or sleeping bags. But these lash tabs are also becoming more common on smaller backpacks. They're a nod to the past, but just as useful. Attach your running shoes to one next time you head to the gym, keeping those stinky things away from the rest of your clothes. Now, I'm sure you're a great driver, but for years, you've probably been neglecting an important safety feature right in front of your eyes. That rear view mirror has a small tab located at the bottom center. It's high time you started using it. When this is flipped forward, the mirror is in day mode, providing a strong reflection of everything behind the car. Flipping the tab backward changes the whole situation to night mode. This reduces the brightness of the headlights behind you, resulting in a safer drive. Another cool car tip? If you're borrowing from a friend, using a rental, or have the memory of a houseplant, cars feature a handy indicator to let you know which side the gas tank is on. It's a tiny arrow next to the pump icon that points either left or right. Where the arrow points, that's where the gas tank can be found. And that's one less thing you have to remember. Okay, off to the grocery store. A regular shopping cart has a useful feature you might have been overlooking. Carts usually include loops in the metal frame, often behind the child seat. As you bag your groceries, hang the ones with fragile or squishable items, like eggs or bread, on these loops. Now they're out of harm's way when you toss that giant watermelon into the cart. Later, when you're unloading your groceries, do yourself a favor and grab that box of plastic wrap. You know, the one that is impossible to unroll without the whole tube coming out while the plastic wrap sticks to itself. Check out either end of the box, and you'll see small tabs that you are supposed to push in. This helps to hold the roll in place so you can easily pull the plastic wrap out without all the fuss. Aluminum foil boxes also have these tabs. Now that you can finally use that plastic wrap, try this appealing hack. Separate that bunch of bananas and cover each stem in some plastic wrap. The stem releases a gas called ethylene. When it reaches the rest of the banana, it encourages the fruit to ripen and turn black. If you wrap the stems, your bananas will last longer. And since you're in your kitchen, you might as well warm up that coffee from this morning. Just remove the gross skin that has formed on top. Don't eat it. Of course, as you open the microwave, you'll notice that the glass in the door has a strange black mesh inside. This mesh is designed to stop any radiation from passing through the glass. Like the electromagnetic waves we discussed earlier, radiation can't pass through metal. That mesh keeps it all safely inside to help you heat up your food. Thank you, science. Oh, and about that cup of coffee, did you know that the handle size can help you determine how much the mug actually holds? Let your fingers guide you. If you can fit 2 fingers into the handle, then the mug holds 8 ounces or 1 measuring cup of liquid. 3 fingers, 10 ounces or 1 1/4 cups. 4 fingers, 12 ounces or 1 1/2 cups. Pretty cool, huh? That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.